Chapter 101, Let Me Kiss You. The little princess of money let out an excited giggle, causing the nearby Dragon King and the others to give a sideways glance. This money-minded guy, he can't get away from money in 3 sentences. The irascible Dragon King contemptuously skimmed his mouth. Soon, the centaur cavalrymen in the deep pit were no longer moving. Under these rounds of arrows, they had all died, and countless rewards such as magic soul orbs of various colors, as well as props and equipments, spread all over the bottom of the entire deep pit. Zhang Zhe waved his hand and the archer's attack finally stopped. The excitement on everyone's face had yet to dissipate. They were no longer skeptical of Zhang Zhe now. They believed that Zhang Zhe would definitely take them through this layer of the demon domain. This wave of centaur cavalry was wiped out by Zhang Zhe again. Everyone was happy. And the one who was the happiest was the little princess of money, especially after she saw the huge amount of loot in the deep pit. She was so happy that her beautiful eyes turned into curved crescent moons. After Zhang Zhe finished collecting these reward items, he stood on the mound of dirt and looked distantly towards the centaur general at the high floor. His next goal would be to tackle the final big boss of this level of the demon domain. Zhang Zhe had read the guide to the magic realm before, and this centaur general would not only be able to use the order banner to order the 3 armies, he would also have a very powerful skill, which was the armor-breaking lance. The power of this skill lies in the fact that it can ignore any defense and directly deal a large amount of damage to the target's body. To put it simply, it doesn't matter how thick armor you wear or how good a shield you hold, in front of a centaur general's iron spear, it's a layer of window paper that breaks with a single poke. So, unless your blood level is high enough, don't presume to get into close combat with General Centaur, you'll die horribly that way. This was a comment about the Centaur General in the guide to the magic realm, which showed how terrifying the Centaur General's attacks were. Also don't forget that this White Horse General in front of you is not an ordinary boss, but an elite level boss, then its attack power will increase exponentially. Zhang Zhe had no doubt that if he was hit by a shot from General Centaur, he was afraid that he would be killed on the spot. Perhaps only a tank-type warrior like the giant god would be able to carry a few hits, but I'm afraid it would be dangerous to be attacked too many times. Lu Yueying stood next to Zhang Zhe and asked with a grave expression on her face, "What should we do next? How are you going to deal with that elite-level centaur general?" Zhang Zhe looked around and saw everyone staring at him. Zhang Zhe's ploys were very successful on these several occasions, achieving brilliant results and leaving a deep impression on everyone, so now everyone couldn't help but treat him as the core and leader of the team, and they all wanted to know what to do next. Even the giant god had retreated to the second line now. However, he didn't feel angry. Instead, he appreciated Zhang Zhe very much, and he thought that Zhang Zhe was born to be an outstanding leader. Definitely can't fight him to the death. Zhang Zhe narrowed his eyes. He was calculating in his mind, with the resources and conditions he has now, how should he fight this powerful enemy? And, ultimately, to win. He now had more than 100 archers, and although the power of shooting in unison was enormous, Zhang Zhe knew that it was unrealistic to kill the centaur general in seconds. With the damage value of these archers, and the defense of the centaur general, it was estimated that it would take at least 50 rounds of flurry fire to finish off the centaur general. However, in such a long period of time, the centaur general was perfectly capable of killing a large portion of the archers. After all, his attacks were so strong that he could almost kill the archers one shot at a time, and by that time, I'm afraid that half of the centaur general's blood would still be left, while Zhang Zhe's archers would be pretty much dead. Therefore, Zhang Zhe had to think of other ways before he could do so. Keep using traps? The centaur general was an elite-level boss and could definitely not be compared to those stupid centaur cavalrymen. He would definitely find out about Zhang Zhe's ploy and would not fall for it easily. And even if he fell into the trap, Zhang Zhe did not think that the deep pit would be able to trap him. So the trap approach isn't perfect either. What other ways are there? Zhang Zhe pursed his lips. This battle today was just too tough. He felt like his IQ was back emptying. General Centauri has moved. Suddenly, someone shouted. Everyone looked in the direction of the tower in unison, and sure enough, they saw the tall elite-level centaur general, who had already come to the ground from the tower. with his head held high and his pace elegant, walking this way without slowing down, as if he was walking leisurely. For an elite-level boss, he didn't have to put any adventurers below the proficiency level rating in his eyes, they were just dirt, and he could take down a large number of them casually. Only adventurers with an excellent rating or higher had the power to fight him. But sadly, there wasn't a single such adventurer on the scene today. "Chairman, what should we do? General Centaur is rushing us." An arrow pierced through the heart nervously shouted to Zhang Zhe. Zhang Zhe narrowed his eyes as he suddenly jumped down from the mound of dirt and walked straight to meet the Centaur General. "President! What are you doing? Come back quickly. It's dangerous." One arrow through the heart's face changed drastically as he tried to pull Zhang Zhe back, but he was stopped by Zhang Zhe. "Leave the rest of the battle to me," Zhang Zhe said in a deep voice, "you guys just watch from the back." Zhang Zhe was prepared when he uttered these words. Right now, Zhang Zhe had the following summoned monsters in his summoning space. For Tidewaker, 1 sky-swallowing frog, 1 silverfin sorcerer, 1 two-headed giant, plus the 3 centaur heavy cavalry that were shot to death by Zhang Zhe in the battle just now. This was all Zhang Zhe had now. Tidewakers can't fight and can only provide blood-returning services, however, they work well with silverfin wizards to produce good results. The heaven-swallowing frog was a long-range cannon, however, it was the boss of the second tier of the demon domain, and its level and strength were too low, making it difficult to deal much damage to the Centaur General, but it was better than nothing. Only the two-headed giant and those 3 centaur heavy cavalry were the main players in Zhang Ze's battle. Especially the two-headed giant, this big guy stood up almost as tall as the Centaur General, although his IQ was worrisome, but his fighting ability was nothing to write home about. After all, it was the final boss of the 7th layer of the demon realm, just 1 level worse than the Centaur General. His strength was still good. Moreover, the two-headed giant could also summon a shadow doppelganger, and if it was coupled with the 3 Centauri heavy cavalry, Zhang Zhe believed that it should be able to have a battle with the Centauri General. "Rakshasa." Lu Yueying ran over and asked worriedly, "Are you really sure?" "No," Zhang Zhe shrugged his shoulders, he really didn't have full certainty. After all, it was an elite-level boss. Lu Yueying immediately stared with wide eyes and said in surprise, "Then you still want to go by yourself? It's too dangerous, isn't it? How about, we retreat now?" "No way." Zhang Zhe shook his head and said, "If I back down this time, the prestige I just built up will completely collapse. Besides, I'm not completely without a chance of winning. As long as I control the situation, there shouldn't be much of a problem." "Don't be silly. That's an elite-level boss." Lu Yueying suddenly pulled Zhang Ze's hand, her willow eyebrows raised, revealing a rare stern expression as she said, "Don't show off. Prestige can be built up again, but a life can only be taken once." Zhang Ze was instantly surprised by Lu Yueying's actions. This girl had always been cold, usually unsmiling, not even speaking more than 10 sentences. What was wrong with her today? He suddenly thought of something and a corner of his mouth curled up slightly. "You are so worried about me, it can't be that. You like me, right?" Zhang Ze's face wore a teasing expression as he laughed. What are you babbling about?" Lu Yueying's pretty face turned red as she gritted her teeth and said, "In short, you're not allowed to go. Retreat with everyone." Zhang Ze looked at the Centaur General who was slowly walking this way and suddenly said, "All right, however, I have a condition. If you agree, I will retreat with everyone else." Lu Yueying's face showed joy and she busily asked, "What conditions?" "Let me have a kiss," Zhang Ze said slowly. Lu Yueying's expression froze, her already flushed cheeks became even redder, and even her speech began to stutter. You. She was usually preoccupied with cultivation, spending almost all of her time on it, and cared very little about the affairs of men and women. Not to mention kissing a boy, I've never even had my hand touched. Today, she was actually asked for a kiss, and it was in full view. She felt so shy that she wanted to refuse on the spot. "Haha, just kidding with you." Zhang Ze suddenly laughed out loud and said, "Look at that nervous expression on your face, don't worry, I can definitely defeat the Centaur General. Just as Zhang Zhe turned around and prepared to meet the Centaur General, Lu Yueying's faint voice suddenly came from behind him. You can kiss me. Huh? This time, it was Zhang Zhe's turn to freeze. He was surprised to look back at Lu Yueying, and then he saw that Lu Yueying had already closed her eyes and seemed to be ready. Only, this girl was tense, like a piece of wood, her two hands were tightly clenched into fists, and her body was still shaking slightly. This look is so vivid that it looks like he is about to go to the torture chamber. Zhang Zhe. He was really just joking just now, and to his surprise, Lu Yueying actually took it seriously. Looking at Lu Yueying's appearance, it was obvious that she had made a good determination to go out on a limb. I didn't expect, my status in her heart is quite high. Zhang Zhe was amused in his heart, however, he also felt a trace of warmth inside. Lu Yueying closed her eyes tightly, a heart like a deer in headlights. She, who had not experienced this kind of thing, was really scared, but in order to not let Zhang Zhe get into danger, she felt that the effort was worth it. However, she waited for several minutes without feeling Zhang Zhe kissing over, so she opened her eyes in confusion and was shocked to find that there was no Zhang Zhe in front of her. Doubtfully, he raised his eyes and looked away to see that Zhang Zhe was already standing face to face with the Centaur General. Rakshasa! You bastard! Lu Yueying lost her color and shouted angrily, then she was about to rush over to help Zhang Zhe. Moon's shadow. The giant god and the others were busy stopping Lu Yueying, fearing that she would do something stupid. You guys let me go over there, he can't beat an elite-level boss by himself. Lu Yueying shouted anxiously. The giant god comforted her, don't panic, brother Rakshasa just left us a message in the chat channel, he's not going to die. Don't forget that he can several boss-level monsters to help him in battle. Moreover, once the situation is bad, he'll use the random teleportation scroll to escape in time. Let's just wait quietly for his good news. But Lu Yueying's eyes were slightly red, she was still relieved. Last time, when she faced the elite-grade Iron-Tooth Wolf alone, she almost hung up. Let's not forget that she was already a skillful level expert at that time, and furthermore, the elite-level Iron-Tooth Wolf was still only the boss of the first level of the demon domain, and as a result, she still met a life-threatening situation now. Zhang Zhe's rating had only just reached the skilled level, but he was facing an elite-level boss on the 8th floor this time, and the gap between the two was incomparable. Therefore, Lu Yueying was very worried about Zhang Zhe's comfort. The grumpy Dragon King said, "What are you worried about? Rakshasa is a man, and true men should charge into battle. Being afraid of death is not a good man." The little princess of money, who was also a woman, sensed Lu Yueying's abnormality, and she gave the Dragon King this hard punch before saying in a bad mood, "You're a nervous guy who doesn't understand anything." After saying that, she directly pulled Lu Yueying aside and said, "Although I've never been in a relationship, but I'm a good judge of people, that Rakshasa is not an ordinary person. If he dares to challenge the elite-level boss alone, then he must be sure of himself, so don't worry about it." After a pause, she whispered, "Moreover, I tell you, you cannot control Rakshasa at all, he is not the same as other men, as to where it is different, I cannot say, in short. It is to give a kind of inscrutable feeling." Inscrutable. Lu Yueying savored these 4 words, indeed, Zhang Zhe just gave off an inscrutable feeling. No matter what kind of situation he was in, Zhang Zhe was able to turn the tide against the wind, and his wisdom and courage were beyond the reach of ordinary people, so yeah, if you fall in love with someone like Rakshasa, then you have to prepare your mind. The little princess of money had a serious look on her face as she said, "If you want to tame this kind of man, you have to be the best you can be, or even better than him, otherwise, he won't take you seriously. It's even more unlikely that he will have you in his heart." Hearing the words of the little princess of money, Lu Yueying froze for a long time and muttered, "Even better than him." Her gaze suddenly flashed with a strange color, "I will definitely be even better than him." Zhang Zhe stood in front of the elite Centaur General, and the difference in height between the two was more than 3 meters. At first glance, the contrast was tremendous. The Centaur General stood tall and looked contemptuously at Zhang Zhe in front of him, his front hooves constantly plowing the earth as if he was suppressing the raging killing intent in his heart. Humans! You invaded my camp and killed my soldiers. This is a score that I must settle with you. The Centaur general's voice was like muffled thunder, shaking Zhang Zai's eardrums. Zhang Zai smiled faintly and said, "Settling scores is not necessary. Have you ever seen a dead person still able to collect debts?" Chapter 102 Zhang Zai's Tactics. The battle was imminent, and Zhang Zai summoned all of his summoned monsters in one breath. The four Tide Callers stood behind Zhang Zai, and their commander, the Blackfin Wizard, opened his palm as a black ball of light floated about. On the other side of Zhang Zai, there was a huge toad squatting, its bulging eyes staring at the Centaur general with an unkind gaze, its large belly fluttering as if it was brewing something. There was also a two-headed giant almost as tall as the Centaur general standing next to him, and the two heads were talking to each other, seemingly not taking the Centaur general in front of them seriously. There were also four Centaur heavy cavalrymen. Their upper bodies were almost wrapped in thick armor, airtight, but through the cracks of their helmets, they saw glimpses of icy gazes with murderous intent. The Centaur general was immediately taken aback by the combat formation behind Zhang Zai. He did not expect that a human could actually summon monsters from the demon realm to fight. "Little brothers, listen to my order and destroy this centaur." Zhang Zai pulled back his bow and arrows, and the two-headed giants and Centaur heavy cavalry on the left and right sides suddenly charged at the Centaur general. The Centaur general was worthy of being an elite-level boss and was very good at sizing up the situation. Seeing the two-headed giant and the three Centaur heavy cavalrymen lunging at him, he quickly distanced himself from them. At the same time, in his rapid movement, he avoided another large fireball that the heaven-swallowing frog spat at him. This Centaur general is too demonic, isn't it? Not only does he know how to break out from the encirclement, he also knows how to dodge long-range attacks. Zhang Zai narrowed his eyes, and he had to say that this Centaur general was the monster with the highest IQ that he had met so far in the demon realm. But Zhang Zai wasn't a vegetarian either. He quickly drew his longbow and built up his power to full capacity, then aimed at one of the Centaur general's horse's legs. His fingers loosened, the bowstring vibrated, and an arrow directly hit the Centaur general's horse's leg. -141. Rakshasa. The Centaur general stumbled and almost fell, but he quickly adjusted his stance and regained his footing. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the two-headed giant and the three Centaur heavy cavalry had already surrounded the Centaur general, and the huge wolf-tooth clubs as well as the war swords ferociously slashed at the Centaur general. The Centaur general was forced to respond, and the two sides fought at once. The battle was fierce. The two-headed giant's wolf-tooth stick danced with great vigor. However, it was rarely able to hit the Centaur general, because the Centaur general's figure was very agile, constantly dodging under the two-headed giant's attacks. The other three Centaur heavy cavalry were on the sidelines to cooperate with the two-headed giant, and their attacks were also very powerful, causing the Centaur general to lose some ground. Dodging the two-headed giant's wolf-tooth club, but unable to dodge the Centaur heavy cavalry's sharp machetes, a bright red damage value rose from the top of the Centaur general's head. It's just a shame that the damage value is so low. It was normal to think about it. This was after all the final boss of the 8th layer of the demon domain, and it was also at the elite level. Whether it was speed, strength, or agility, it far exceeded the two-headed giant and the three Centaur heavy cavalrymen. However, Zhang Zai remained confident as he continuously harassed the Centaur general with his longbow, interrupting his rhythm. As the Centaur general dodged, Zhang Zai's bow and arrow would hit his horse's leg, causing him to dodge and take a few hard hits. And when the Centaur general attacked, Zhang Zai's bow and arrow aimed at his eyes again, causing him to dodge the bow and arrow to protect his glasses, and as a result, he was unable to hit his target accurately. This, coupled with the sky-swallowing frog in the distance, which spewed out a large fireball from time to time, made the Centaur general even more tired of dodging, and his attacks would rarely work. Thus, under Zhang Zai's tawdry maneuvering, the Centaur general had barely managed to gain any advantage within this half-hour or so of fighting, and his own blood level was reduced by about 20%. "You fucking things!" The Centaur general let out an angry roar. This battle he had fought was too suffocating. It was almost difficult to bring out his own strong strength. Blame it on Zhang Zai's god-awful bow and arrow shooting that left him defenseless. Thus, the Centaur general decided to change his tactics, and instead of tangling with the stupid big man with two heads in front of him, and the three Centaur heavy cavalrymen, he shifted his target to Zhang Zai, who he wanted to kill first. That's right, Zhang Zai had managed to pull the hate onto himself. Generally speaking, in the game, the higher the damage done to a monster, the more the monster's hate value will fall on whoever it is. But with General Centaur, that rule changed. Although Zhang Zai did not cause much damage to him, because Zhang Zai's attack affected him too much, it forced him to make Zhang Zai his first target to kill. Crap! I can't believe it's coming to me. Seeing the Centaur general break through the siege of the two-headed giant and the three Centaur heavy cavalrymen, throwing off his four hooves and charging madly towards his side, Zhang Zai's face instantly revealed an expression of surprise. Originally, I wanted to let you live a little longer. Since you're so anxious to die, let me fulfill you. Zhang Zai skimmed his lips and said to the Blackfin wizard behind him, I'll leave the rest to you. Quack quack quack. Master, please don't worry. The Blackfin sorcerer revealed a sinister smile, then he raised his hands, and black smoke began to continuously gush out from his entire body, then he slowly floated up into mid-air, as he was casting the skill, Death Sacrifice. Zhang Zai, on the other hand, rolled over and mounted the back of the Centaur heavy cavalryman that had been left by his side, which he had purposely left behind for himself to use as a mount. After all, he certainly couldn't outrun General Centaur's 4 legs on his own too. Distance yourself from the Centaur general and circle the Blackfin wizard. After Zhang Zai's order was given, the Centaur heavy cavalry nodded heavily and immediately ran with Zhang Zai on their backs. The Centaur general was extremely fast, probably rushing to Zhang Zai's side in a few breaths, waving the lance in his hand and constantly chasing Zhang Zai. The Centaur heavy cavalryman carrying Zhang Zai ran in front of him, the Centaur general behind him was frantically chasing after him, and the distance between the two was constantly shrinking, and it looked like they were about to be caught up. Careless. Forgot the effective weight on the speed of heavy Centaur cavalry. Zhang Zai frowned. Although the speed of the Centaur heavy cavalry was not slow, the weight of his armor was not light, and now that he was carrying Zhang Zai on his back, it was normal for his speed to drop. As the two grew closer, the Centaur general wheeled up his lance and stabbed the Centaur mid-tin soldier in one fell swoop. -3857. General Centauri. The Centaur heavy cavalry's blood level suddenly went down by half. Zhang Zai watched and smacked his lips. Fortunately, he was now riding on a Centaur cavalryman, so all the damage was taken by the Centaur heavy cavalryman. If this shot was stuck on his body, I'm afraid that he would have been killed in seconds on the spot. Blackfin sorcerer, its time is for your black sorcery to come out. Zhang Zai turned his head to give orders to the Blackfin sorcerer. The Blackfin sorcerer's Death Sacrifice needed casting time and could not be interrupted in the middle, which was why Zhang Zai mounted the Centaur cavalry and guided the Centaur general around the Blackfin sorcerer. There's no way around it, it only works on targets within a certain range, and once you leave that range, it will have no effect. And now, a palm pressed down on the top of a surfer's head, and between flashes of black light, that surfer's entire body instantly became paralyzed, as if it had been drained of blood. The time needed to cast Blackfin sorcerer's Death Sacrifice had ended, and the skill was officially activated. Only to see one of his palms pressed on the top of the head of a tide collar, and between the flashes of black light, that tide collar let out a miserable scream, and instantly its entire body became parched, as if it had been drained of blood. On the other hand, the Centaur general who had been attacked by the Death Sacrifice had his figure lurched, and he let out a muffled grunt as he covered his hair, followed by a large red damage value floating up from the top of his head. -18,855. Blackfin wizard. At the same time, a black skull pattern appeared above General Centaur's head. Death Curse, Level 1. Grade 1. Effect, Cursed by Blackfin Wizard, spell damage stacks by 20%. The great thing about the Blackfin Wizard's skill is that it doesn't have a fixed damage value, but rather a percentage of the target's blood. The more blood you have, the higher the damage value, and vice versa. But no matter how much or how little blood there was, when the curse of death stacked up to 5 layers, it was certain death. Zhang Zai's purpose was to get the Centaur general killed in one breath through the Blackfin sorcerer's death sacrifice. This was his last killer move, and if it didn't work, then he had no choice but to escape. What? I actually received a curse. The Centaur general immediately noticed that his state was abnormal, and he turned his head to look at the Blackfin sorcerer floating in midair. You damned black-skinned fishman. Take your life. The Centaur general immediately swung the lance in his hand and turned around to charge the Blackfin wizard. Where would Zhang Zai let him get away with it? He had moved the two-headed giant and the other 3 Centaur heavy cavalry back early on, stopping the Centaur general halfway down the road and preventing him from attacking the Blackfin wizard. Zhang Zai also joined the fray, but he wouldn't be foolish enough to get into a close combat with the Centaur general. He was more subtle about hiding in the distance and firing cold arrows. 155. Rakshasa. 586. Two-headed giant. -227. Centauri heavy cavalry. -219. Centauri heavy cavalry. -300. Centauri heavy cavalry. -114. Swallowing frog. Under the siege of many monsters and Zhang Zai, the Centaur general was unable to get close to the Blackfin wizard while taking a lot of damage, causing him to keep letting out angry roars. Boo! -37,598. Blackfin wizard. The Blackfin sorcerer again sacrificed a tide collar and cast a second level of curse attack on the Centaur general. Death curse, level 2. Grade 1. Effect, cursed by Blackfin wizard, spell damage stacks by 40%. And at this moment, the Centaur general, who had continuously stacked 2 layers of curses, had his blood level down to nearly half. Beautiful. Zhang Zai was overjoyed in his heart. As long as he continued to find this rhythm, victory would not be far from him. Damn it! The Centaur general roared up to the sky, and suddenly his 2 front hooves raised up violently before landing heavily on the ground. Boom! A circular wave of air, centered on the Centaur general, spread out in all directions. At the same time, the solid sandstone ground unexpectedly gave him a crack from this shock. Thunderclap. Grade 1. Effect, inflicts 1,000 points of damage to all targets within a radius of 5 meters and, at the same time, falls into a 15-second stun state. Crap. This guy actually has another skill? Zhang Zai immediately widened his eyes in surprise. He clearly remembered that it was clearly written in the guide to the magic realm that the Centaur general only had one skill, and that was, order the 3 armies. When did another, thunder shocking stomp, pop up? Could it be that because this is an elite level boss, it has an extra skill? Zhang Zai had a headache. The 2-headed giant and the 3 Centaur heavy cavalrymen who were affected by the shock tramp were completely incapacitated, and a circle of flying little stars appeared on top of their heads, and their bodies staggered as if they were drunk, especially the 2-headed giant. The 2 heads shook together, and in the end, there was a bang, crashing together and falling heavily to the ground. The Centaur general, on the other hand, took this opportunity to break out of the encirclement and kill the Blackfin wizard floating in the air. Oh no, it's going to be bad. Zhang Zai's heart sank. Although the Blackfin wizard was also a boss-level monster, he was after all a mage type with low blood and defense, so he was afraid that he would not be able to withstand General Centaur's ferocious shot. However, when Zhang Zai saw the Centaur general running back and forth underneath the Blackfin sorcerer, furiously swinging his lance, but he could not touch the Blackfin sorcerer, who was floating at a height of nearly 10 meters, Zhang Zai almost burst out laughing. Forgot that Blackfin wizards float in the air when they cast their spells. Zhang Zai stifled his laughter and shouted at the Centaur general, "Hey! 4-legged one, you jump instead. Just jump 10 meters high and you'll be able to touch my Blackfin wizard." The Centaur general was furious, but no matter how hard he swung his lance, he just couldn't reach the Blackfin wizard. Boo! Another dowsing spell attack. -76,631. Blackfin wizard. The Blackfin sorcerer again sacrificed a tide collar and cast a second level of curse attack on the Centaur general. Death Curse, Level 3. Grade 1. Effect: Cursed by Blackfin Wizard, spell damage stacks by 60%. Stacked with 3 layers of curses, it caused great damage to the Centaur general. At this point, his blood level had dropped to about 20%. I will not let you go, Fishman. The Centaur general roared again. Zhang Ze heard his ears calloused, and laughed. You always say you won't let go of this, but over that, you'd better come up with some real skills. After saying that, he shot an arrow at the Centaur general, which was plucked away by the Centaur general with a shot. Do not underestimate me. I am the greatest general of the Centaur clan. Wait for me, all of you. With that said, the Centaur general suddenly ran wildly into the distance. This is fleeing after dropping a harsh sentence? Zhang Ze was stunned. Just this? Still the greatest general, my ass. However, Zhang Ze did not dare to rush after the Centaur general. As the saying goes, the poor are not to be chased. Moreover, although the Centaur general only had less than 20% of his blood remaining, his fighting strength was still there, so in case he came back, it would be enough for Zhang Ze to drink a pot of water. Therefore, Zhang Ze could only wait for the two-headed giant and the other 3 Centaur heavy cavalrymen to recover from their stunned state before speaking. However, next, a scene that doubly shocked Zhang Ze occurred. Chapter 103, Killing Centaur Generals. After running a few hundred meters away, the Centaur general suddenly stopped, then reversed his direction and actually charged back again. What kind of tawdry maneuver is this? Zhang Ze was surprised. He didn't understand why the Centaur general came back when he had clearly escaped. In the next moment, he realized what this Centaur general was trying to do. Only the Centaur general raised his lance and aimed it at the Blackfin sorcerer who was casting a spell in the air. Then with the help of his impulse, he flung his arm hard and threw his lance. Crap! He actually still has long-range attacks. Zhang Ze's eyes widened. This battle had seen too many unexpected situations that far exceeded his expectations. The Centaur general's lance transformed into a black lightning in the air. The speed was unparalleled, and Zhang Ze even heard the popping sound produced by the lance cutting through the air. And oblivious to this, the Blackfin wizard is still casting his spells in a flash. The lance pierced directly through the Blackfin wizard's chest. His blood was instantly emptied, and a large damage value floated up from the top of his head. Minus 811,643. General Centauri, blast. Your summoned follower, Blackfin Wizard, has been killed in action. Nima. This blaster attack is too vicious. Zhang Ze's forehead risked a cold sweat. If this lance had been aimed at him just now, then he would have gone to meet God by now. The reason why the Centaur general used a long-range throwing attack on the Blackfin sorcerer must also be because the Centaur general's attack couldn't touch the Blackfin sorcerer, which is why it had such an effect. Zhang Ze was pondering in his mind, and although I had attracted the Centaur general's hatred before, I was still standing on the ground where the Centaur general could attack me. That's why I didn't use this extreme attack, otherwise the consequences would be unimaginable. Zhang Ze did have some fear in his heart, but he did not have the time to think about such things now. The Blackfin wizard had already died in battle, so the tactics he had employed earlier were no longer effective at this moment. The Centaur general still had 20% of his blood. If he relied solely on the two-headed giant and the Centaur heavy cavalry, I was afraid that it would take a long time before he could wipe out the Centaur general. More importantly, Zhang Ze would have to pay more for this, and he was afraid that his two-headed giant, as well as the 3 Centauri heavy cavalry, would have to be accounted for here as well. After all, the elite-level Centaur general was too powerful. Moreover, the two-headed giant and the Centaur heavy cavalry had also dropped to about half of their blood levels after some intense fighting just now, so Zhang Ze did not hold much hope that they would be able to survive the battle later on. Ha 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 ha. The Centaur general swung his fist hard and let out an excited laugh. I told you so. Definitely won't let you go. Black-skinned fishman. His gaze shifted to Zhang Ze, and he said coldly, next, it's your turn. After saying that, the Centaur general drew out the matching sword at his waist, which was actually golden in color. Under the reflection of the sunlight it emitted a piercing golden light, and it looked very lofty. However, in Zhang Zai's eyes, it was chilling. Two-headed giants, Centaur heavy cavalry, you guys stop him quick. Zhang Zai was a good man, and immediately controlled the Centaur heavy cavalry underneath him to start retreating, while ordering the two-headed giant that had just awakened and the other 3 Centaur heavy cavalry to go and surround the Centaur general. The two-headed giant and the other 3 Centaur heavy cavalry immediately rushed up and fought the Centaur general to a standstill. Although the Centaur general had lost his lance, the power of this golden blade in his hand was also very powerful, and Zhang Zai even felt that it was even more powerful than the Centaur general who had used his lance after the fact. -6581. General Centauri. In just 2 shots, one of the Centaur heavy cavalrymen with the lowest blood level was directly cut off by the Centaur general's sword and died on the spot. The situation of the other 2 Centaur heavy cavalry was also not optimistic. Their blood level was only about 10% left, facing the Centaur general's whirlwind-like golden sword attack. I'm afraid that they wouldn't be able to last more than a few rounds. Now only the two-headed giant could still barely make an even match with the Centaur general, but this guy's IQ was really too low, and the 2 heads often quarreled with each other, resulting in uncoordinated body situations and loopholes from time to time, which allowed the Centaur general to take advantage of the loopholes, and the golden blade flashed, directly taking away the two-headed giant's several thousands of blood, which caused Zhang Zai to feel both anxious and helpless. Brush up. 2 more golden blades flashed before his eyes, and a second Centaur heavy cavalryman died under the Centaur general's blade. Now, only the last of the Centaur heavy cavalry and the two-headed giant were still fighting hard. It's not looking good. Zhang Zai frowned as he was not far from the side, thinking about countermeasures while shooting arrows. Suddenly he realized something and a hint of joy appeared on his face. Why did I forget about this? Humph, General Centaur, you're dead. Zhang Zai immediately sent a message to One Night Knowledge in the chat channel. One Night to Know Autumn received it and quickly replied to Zhang Zai, and the 2 of them worked out a plan. -6675. General Centauri. Your summoned attendant, the Centaur heavy cavalry, has been killed in action. But it was a gap between words. The last Centaur heavy cavalryman also died. Now only the two-headed giant was left to fight alone, but he was also beaten by the Centaur general. His blood level plummeted, and was now only left at about 10%. With a thought, Zhang Zai immediately took back the remaining summoned monsters such as the two-headed giant and the heaven-swallowing frog into his summoning space, and then urged the Centaur heavy cavalry underneath him to furiously gallop towards the side of the giant god and One Night Knowing Autumn. Run! Run! Lu Yueying's heart was in her throat. She had been watching the entirety of Zhang Zai's previous battle, and her mood had risen and fallen as violently as if she was riding a roller coaster. However, the good thing was that every time he encountered danger, Zhang Zai would turn it into a safe haven, and his tactics were excellent, consuming more than 80% of the Centaur general's blood. That's something he did all by himself. It should be known that in the course of the history of human exploration of the demon realm, there had never been a situation where an adventurer single-handedly faced this kind of elite-level boss and still managed to retreat in one piece. Generally speaking, if one wanted to defeat an elite-level boss, one would need to form a minimum of a 100-member group, and the team's members must have a minimum rating of skilled level or higher. Even so, no one could guarantee that there wouldn't be adventurers dying in battle, and a dozen or so deaths would be considered the best-case scenario. And now, with his own strength, Zhang Zai led his few summoned attendants and actually managed to achieve such a battle result, which was already very impressive. One Night Knowing Autumn stared closely at Zhang Zai and the Centaur general, seeing the 2 of them running ahead and the other chasing after them, with the distance between the 2 constantly shrinking. In his mind, he also murmured, "Closer. Rakshasa, draw the Centaur general closer again. Lure it into my range." Zhang Zai was also desperately urging the Centaur heavy cavalry underneath him to run fast, but even so, the Centaur general caught up with them. Brush up. Golden light flashed as two slashes landed on the Centaur heavy cavalry. -4,841. General Centauri. -5,993. General Centauri. The Centaur heavy cavalryman's blood was instantly emptied, his 4 legs went limp, and his entire body went limp. Since it was in the middle of a high-speed run, the Centaur heavy cavalryman's body tumbled on the ground for a while, and Zhang Zhe followed suit. Having stopped tumbling with great difficulty, Zhang Zhe stood up shakily, only to feel dizzy as if he had drunk 10 bottles of fake wine. Turning his head, he saw that Centaur general, fierce and vicious, waving the long golden sword in his hand and madly charging towards him. At this moment, it was bullshit to say that Zhang Zhe wasn't scared in his heart. As long as the Centaur general's long sword gave him a blow, I'm afraid he would ascend to heaven on the spot. Fortunately, Zhang Zhe's current position was already within the range of one Knight Jiqiu, so when General Centaur's machete was about to fall towards Zhang Zhe's head, a blue light flashed in the sky. Countless ice cones fell from the sky, instantly freezing General Centaur. And his blade was only about 10 centimeters away from Zhang Zhe's head. When Zhang Zhe saw this scene, he let out a long breath and his heart finally caught up. On the other side, one Knight Jiqiu also wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and muttered on his lips, "That was close. Brother Rakshasa, next time you can't play like this, I'm really easy to be scared out of my mind by you." The icy storm effect of one night knowing can temporarily freeze the target for 5 seconds and, at the same time, reduce the target's movement speed by 50%. So Zhang Zhe took this opportunity to jog all the way back to the crowd. He couldn't take a break in time, and a fat and big figure appeared in front of him with a thought. "It's a sky-swallowing frog. Sky-swallowing frog. Blast him for me." Zhang Zhe slapped the heaven-swallowing frog's big belly and gritted his teeth, quack. The heaven-swallowing frog widened its 2 froggy eyes, and its white belly bulged all of a sudden, and then it opened its mouth wide, and a huge fireball spewed color out of its mouth, and flew towards the distance, towards the Centaur general who was walking in slow motion. Because he was hit by a cold ice spell, General Centaur's movements were very slow, and it also caused his dodging ability to drop drastically, and as he watched the heaven-swallowing frog's large fireball fly towards him, he was unable to dodge it. Boom. -92,885. Swallowing frogs. The fireball smashed heavily into the Centaur general's body. The fireball burst, and the Centaur general was knocked off his feet as a huge damage value floated up from the top of his head. The people present were all wide-eyed. They found it hard to believe that a large fireball from a heaven-swallowing frog could actually inflict such horrific damage on the Centaur general. Crap. Is this big toad's fireball damage so high? It's actually almost 100,000. Terrifying. The grumpy Dragon King smacked his lips in surprise. The giant god looked closely. He had long ago noticed a pattern of a skull floating around above the Centaur general's head, and he immediately realized that the pattern was déjà vu. I know. It's the boss of the 5th level of the demon domain, the Blackfin Wizard's death sacrifice. The giant god remembered, and he said with a face full of excitement, "That's right. It must have been Zhang Zhe who had his Blackfin sorcerer cast a curse on the Centaur general, and as I recall, the curse would cause the target to suffer more magical damage, and the effects are still stackable." One night knowing Autumn sniffed and also tried to fire a cold ice spell that hit the Centaur general's body, and sure enough, it also dealt over 1,000 points of damage. That's right. It is indeed a death curse. Moreover, as I look at this damage value, the curse has stacked up 3 layers at the very least. Brother Rakshasa is really powerful. He seems to have calculated a lot of things. At this moment, General Centaur's blood level was only about 3% left. However, he had now lifted the icebound state and his actions had returned to normal, and he glared viciously at Zhang Zhe, with a stance that seemed as if he was itching to tear Zhang Zhe into pieces. Despicable human. You dare to count on me. I will never let you go. After saying that, the Centaur general threw off his 4 hooves and killed Zhang Zhe straight towards him like a black whirlwind. One night knowing autumn immediately cast ice wind and rain again, wanting to freeze the Centaur general, but unfortunately, his skill had already been recognized by the Centaur general, and a large portion of the ice rain landed in the air, as the Centaur general, from the flanks, rushed in front of the crowd. At this moment, a large rain of arrows met the Centaur general and fell down on his head. It turned out to be one arrow through the heart, leading the other archers and launching an attack on the Centaur general. The Centaur general put up his small round shield, and the long golden blade in his right hand almost danced into a windmill, blocking most of the arrows out, but there were still some that shot at his body, dealing him around 1,000 points of damage. At this moment, the Centaur general was already in a crippled state, with only a sliver of blood left in his blood trough, and now, I'm afraid that any archer shooting an arrow at him would kill him. Damn it! The Centaur general sensed that he was now severely low on blood and knew that he would not be able to kill Zhang Zhe today, no matter what. So he immediately turned his body around and fled to the side at an extremely fast speed. Want to run? Zhang Ze's eyes narrowed and he immediately raised his longbow, aiming at the Centaur general before opening his bow and releasing his arrow. Brush. Arrow shot. Humph. Want to shoot me to death? Dream on. When the Centaur general saw Zhang Ze shooting arrows at him, a disdainful expression appeared on his face, only to see him swinging in the air with the long sword in his hand, snapping it and splitting an arrow that was shot at him into two in the first place. However, the next moment, his eyes widened in shock, only to see that another arrow was rapidly enlarging in his pupils. And it was too late for him to continue swinging his sword to block. Snap. -244. Rakshasa. The arrow nailed the top of the Centaur general's head at once, and his incredulous expression had frozen on his face, and then, the luster in his eyes gradually dissipated, and his body went limp, and with a thud, he fell heavily to the ground. Congratulations. Killed the 8th level, Demon Domain boss, General Centaur. Chapter 104, The Terrifying 9th Level of the Demon Realm. Zhang Ze let out a long breath, and this was also a method that he had just thought of, which was to shoot 2 arrows at the same time, one in front of the other. Even if the Centaur general had been able to knock out the first arrow, he certainly wouldn't have expected another one to follow right behind. Therefore, Zhang Ze was taking advantage of General Centaur's negligent and careless character trait to directly take his life. Zhang Ze opened his summoning space and saw that there was an additional imposing Centaur general inside, and an excited smile appeared on his face. This is an expert. With him, it will be easier to fight monsters in the future. Zhang Ze thought excitedly in his heart. Seeing Zhang Ze kill the Centaur general with a single arrow, the entire audience applauded and cheered to the heavens. Especially the many archer brothers, such as one arrow through the heart. They were happy for Zhang Ze's victory, and at the same time, they were proud to be Zhang Ze's comrades in arms. Ha ha ha. I told you, our chairman is definitely this. One arrow through the heart excitedly gave a thumbs up and said excitedly to the archers around him, I won't say anything else, I'll be hanging out with the chairman in the future. The president has fulfilled his promise. We must also fulfill our own promises and look up to the president in the future. If the president says 1, he means 1, and if he says 2, we as a group will never say anything. I posted the video of the battle between Chairman and General Centaur just now to my circle of friends, and immediately there were a few bowman friends who wanted to join our guild. Does Chairman still accept them? The faces of all the people were filled with excited and happy smiles, and at the same time, they were even more confident about the future. The Centaur general dropped quite a lot of loot, and Zhang Ze directly walked over to collect all the items into his backpack. Right now, his backpack was filled with all sorts of items, with as many as 2,000 magic soul orbs alone. There were also hundreds of various potions and props. The equipment was a little less, but a dozen or so pieces were still there, only that the ratings were all around B and C. After all, those Centaur monsters were just ordinary little monsters that wouldn't drop equipment with too good of a rating. However, when Zhang Ze was picking up the Centaur general's loot, he unexpectedly discovered that the golden battle sword used by the Centaur general had exploded. The attributes of this warblade should be good, right? After all, it's an item dropped by an elite-level boss. Let me see its rating. Zhang Zhe checked the information of that golden battle knife and unexpectedly discovered that it was a weapon rated at S-class. Golden sword. Quality, S. Damage, 1650 to 3400. Special effect, increases attack speed by 20%. Durability, 700,700. Haha, the special effect is actually increasing attack speed by 20%. The attribute is really good. It's worthy of being an S-rank weapon. Zhang Zhe was very satisfied with this weapon. After thinking about it, he shared the information of this weapon to the team channel and then said to the crowd, "This S-ranked weapon was popped by the Centaur General. Those who need it should report their names and we'll all decide who it belongs to with the dice." In the world of magic, adventurers can use dice to decide where items belong, or how things are decided. However, props like dice needed to be purchased by the adventurer on the trading platform. The system in the magic realm didn't provide such things. Because it's a completely spontaneous decision by the adventurers. The crowd looked at each other in disbelief, and the Grumpy Dragon King said directly, "What else to throw the dice for? You can just take this thing. After all, you've got the most credit." Do you guys think so? The Grumpy Dragon King turned his head to the rest of the group, who nodded in return. One Arrow Through the Heart shouted, "The Dragon King is right. Today, if it wasn't for Lord Chairman leading us all the way through the battle and finally destroying the Centaur General, we, the despised bowmen, might still be at the altar begging our grandparents to ask for help to take us through the battle. So I say, all the loot from today's battle should go to Lord President." Yeah. I'm already satisfied that I was able to clear the level today, so I'll leave the bonus items and whatnot to the chairman. Consider it as my thank you gift. It's the Lord President who gives us dignity and confidence, and I think these are priceless, so what face do we have to ask for things? You guys know, according to the current market price, begging for an expert to lead someone through the level, that's $100,000 per person to start with. The last boss of the 8th layer of the magic realm is an elite level, so I estimate that the price will be at least $1 million. The chairman has already done his best by not asking us for money. We should be thankful for that. All the archers on the scene were talking, and they all took the position that they definitely didn't want any loot. The giant god and one knight Jiqiu, as well as Lu Yueying, were of the same opinion, and the only one who raised an objection was the little princess of money. Hey hey hey. What are you guys doing, giant god and dragon king? Why don't you want the loot? The little princess of money said with a depressed face, "It's fine if those archers don't want the loot, their own strength is very weak, and they don't play any decisive role in this battle. But we also contributed, why don't we want the loot? Those are all money." The giant god laughed, "Little princess, think about it, in today's entire battle, the Rakshasa brothers first came up with the plan and then saved the day in the end. He got the most credit, so it's only fair and reasonable that the spoils of war be handled by him." The giant god is right. Little princess, you said you contributed to the battle? What did you contribute? Tell me about it and listen. The Grumpy Dragon King said from the sidelines, clutching his shoulders and skimming his lips. I. The little princess of money blinked her eyes. She carefully recalled the process of the battle just now, and it seemed like she really didn't put in any effort, and she didn't even give any an adventurer to replenish their blood. After all, those centaurs were all wiped out in deep pit traps without any chance to fight the adventurers in close quarters during the entire battle. The last Centaur General was also taken out by Zhang Zhe single-handedly and alone, and did not use her money little princess to assist in returning blood. So, to say that the matter of contributing to the effort, she, the little princess of money, had no say at all. But I'm just not happy about it. So many goodies, so much money. The little princess of money pouted her little mouth with a grumpy face. Zhang Zhe smiled and said, "I know how everyone feels, but there's too much loot today for me to keep it all to myself." He looked at the large group of archers in front of him and said, "Brothers, you deserve the most credit for wiping out most of the Centaur cavalry this time. Without your arrows raining down on us and contributing to help digging and filling in the pits, my plan wouldn't have succeeded. so I'll be dividing the loot as evenly as possible amongst you all. Zhang Zhe looked at the giant gods people and said, everyone is now in a guild, and as the president, I naturally have to safeguard the interests of all the members, so no matter how much effort is put into this battle, as long as one participates, they all have a part to play. The crowd's faces also revealed a look of delight after hearing this. They originally also truly wanted to give all of these loot to Zhang Zhe, but Zhang Zhe shared all of these loot with a chauvinistic attitude, which also made the crowd very admiring and touched the little princess of money was even happier. She was so happy to finally have money to take. Zhang Zhe divided the magic soul orbs into more than 100 equal portions and then distributed them to everyone. As for items such as props and equipment, they could only be distributed according to each person's needs, and those who didn't get them could get more magic soul orbs as compensation. In this way, although everyone received the reward items, because of the relatively large number of people, the share was actually smaller, but it was finally raining on everyone's parade. Ah, it's only so little, ah. After the little princess of money got her share of reward items, seeing that there were only a dozen or so magic soul orbs and a bottle of blue replenishing potion, her pretty face instantly twitched and muttered in dissatisfaction. The grumpy dragon king on the side came over and hemmed and hawed. What? Not satisfied? Give me everything then. Go go go. A mosquito's leg is still meat even if it's small. Old mother has overspent again this month, so it's just the right time to use this money to fill it up. The little princess of money immediately hid far away and made a face at the dragon king. Now that the loot had been distributed and the crowd had gotten the key to the next level of the demon domain, they were preparing to go through the stone door to enter the next level. Right at this moment, a large group of adventurers rushed into the martial arts practice ground, and they looked at the empty martial arts practice ground with a surprised look on their faces. Strange, where's that elite boss? And the thousands of centaur cavalry? Why are they all gone? Zhang Zhe and the others looked back, only to see that these adventurers were the same adventurers who had previously guarded the outside of the centaur fortress, and looking at their posture, they should have waited for the masters that they were expecting, and had formed a large team that numbered up to a few hundred. Those adventurers on the opposite side had also spotted Zhang Zhe and the others, with a look of surprise on their faces. Aren't those the archers who went into the centaur fortress before? They're still alive? I thought they'd been killed by the boss and wiped out. No, look at one of their bullish looks. It can't be that they wiped out the bosses and those centaur cavalry on this floor, right? How is that possible? They're just archers. A trash-like profession. Moreover, there's no tank profession to block the centaur cavalry's charge for them. It's good enough for them to survive. How can they possibly defeat the boss here and destroy the centaur cavalry here? I definitely don't believe it. But there's no longer a boss or those centaur cavalry here, just these archers. How do you explain that? This may be. Probably. Is that they also hired a master and then helped them pass? Yes, this must be what it looks like. Hearing those adventurers talking and speculating non-stop, Zhang Zhe and One Arrow Through the Heart just laughed without saying a word, not bothering to explain to these stupid adventurers. For them, one day in the future, they would prove to these adventurers that the bowman profession was definitely not garbage. And, still, one of the strongest professions in the magic realm. One after another, the crowd passed through the stone door and entered the 9th level of the demon domain. A figure appeared on the altar, and everyone looked around curiously. This was the first time they had come to the 9th layer of the demonic domain. Although, there were some pictures of the 9th layer of the magic realm in the Magic Realm Guide, the information that the pictures brought to the crowd was still limited, and only by experiencing it in person did it feel the most real. Before the eyes of the crowd, a huge shrine appeared, which was built in a very grand manner, though the style was a bit dark, as on the murals on the walls of the shrine. One could see a lot of content that had something to do with death-like skeletons, like massacres, and even a lot of images of torture. The crowd's excitement was immediately cooled down by these brutal and horrifying murals, and there were some timid adventurers whose backs were chilled by the gory images. Because the images are so lifelike, it's almost as if they're actually happening. The sense of immersion is superb. Crap. What is this place? The Netherworld? It's too scary. The guidebook of the demon region says that this ninth layer of the demon region is a very scary place, and the monsters here are all evil religious people who are cruel and murderous. It seems that it really isn't wrong. Is it possible to cross this layer of magic? I get bloodsick. There were even a few female adventurers who were so scared that they didn't dare to look at those horrible murals with their proper eyes. The giant god said to Zhang Zhe next to him, "Everyone is already physically and mentally exhausted after today's fierce battle, so why don't we let everyone go offline first, and let's explore the ninth layer of the demon domain tomorrow night?" Zhang Zhe nodded and said, "Let's do it as you want, boss." Ever since Zhang Zhe became the guild's president, the giant god had consciously retreated to the second line, and was willing to take the initiative to discuss with Zhang Zhe when he encountered anything. The giant god's meaning was clear, he was just ready to step aside. However, Zhang Zhe did not monopolize the power, but gave the vice president position of the guild to the giant god. Now, apart from some general direction issues that Zhang Zhe, the president, grasped, the rest of the trivial matters were left to the giant god to handle. After receiving Zhang Zhe's consent, the giant god said to the crowd, "It's getting late today, and everyone is tired after such a fierce battle just now. Let's call it a day and go offline for a rest, we'll continue tomorrow." The crowd nodded, and then one by one, they all got off the line. Zhang Zhe greeted the giant god and Lu Yueying and the others, and also left the demon region, and only after returning to his home did Zhang Zhe's nerves, which had been tense all along, slowly relax. This battle today was really too dangerous, not to say 9 deaths was almost the same. Although Zhang Zhe was a traveler, and also obtained powerful natural skills, but this does not indicate that he is invincible. In the unknown world of the magic realm, if you are not careful and cautious, step by step, the disaster will also sooner or later come to the head. Safety first and caution has always been Zhang Zhe's motto. After simply washing up, Zhang Zhe began to rest. Early the next morning, after having breakfast, Zhang Zhe came to school. As soon as he entered the classroom, Zhang Zhe saw a line written in large letters on the blackboard. Only 7 days left until the National Martial Arts Examination. Chapter 105, Let Sister Educate You. The atmosphere in the classroom today also seemed more somber and tense than usual. The students who usually liked to chat and laugh, all of them sat quietly in their seats, either looking down at their books or thinking about the future. In short, there was basically no more noise and clamor. Zhang Zhe returned to his seat and twisted his head to look at Wang Yang next to him. This guy was actually stuffy and frantically studying, making Zhang Zhe quite surprised. After the National Martial Arts exam is over, it will be followed by the National Literature exam. Wang Yang turned his head to Zhang Zhe and said, "I can't do well in the martial arts exam, and if the literature exam pulls down again, I won't have any school to attend." He was full of remorse and said, "I hate to spend all my time studying now. Even the time for eating, sleeping and pooping is used. I regret that I didn't study well in the beginning, and now I'm doing it on the spur of the moment. Do you think it's still too late?" Zhang Zhe was speechless for a while. To tell the truth would surely hurt Wang Yang's heart. As far as that guy's cultural level was concerned, it was just like a junior high school student. Not to mention the National Literature exam, even the usual class practice exams, this guy hasn't passed any of them. However, in order not to demoralize Wang Yang, Zhang Zhe had to tell a kind lie with a clear conscience. "I think, if you put up a bit of a fight in these last few days, you might still have a chance." "It's done. With your words, brother, I'll definitely get into college," Wang Yang said with a face of excitement like he had shot chicken blood, and then, he continued to study in a bored manner. Zhang Zhe shook his head as he took out the notebook that Lu Yueying had given him earlier, flipping through the martial arts insights inside and rehearsing the moves inside over and over again in his mind. He decided that when he went to work at the martial arts school after school today, he would take the time to try to practice in person, in order to make the final preparations for the National Martial Arts exam. The class bell rang, and the class teacher, Mr. Lu Wei, strided into the classroom, his face solemn as he said to the class, "Everyone should have already seen this line I wrote on the blackboard. The National Martial Arts examination will be held soon, so everyone should make preparations before it's too late. Also, I want to tell you that tomorrow we will be filling out the application, so everyone go home today and get ready and think about what school you want to apply for. My advice is to make realistic application volunteers in the light of your actual situation, and never choose blindly. There is only one chance to fill out the application volunteers, and once there is a mistake, you will lose the qualification to choose, and very few schools will take you in again. I hope you can pay enough attention to it. Lu Wei paused and said, if you all don't know much about yourself, you can go to the school martial arts center after school to test yourself and see what your level really is. In fact, in the class, only a third of the students could actually get into the martial arts school, and most of them were basically hopeless because their talent level was below B grade. Like Wang Yang, they will go to take the national literature examination and join the society in the future, engaging in some ordinary people's work and finishing this life. Between classes, someone just shouted out to the class to join a special message group for those who wished to take the martial arts exam. Zhang Zhe did not join. For him, this kind of information group had no significance. It was a way for certain people to pull together contacts. Only the information group of the martial arts school that he joined after he had been admitted to the school would be useful. After school, Zhang Zhe went to work at the school martial arts school. A few of his classmates passed by him, and Zhang Zhe heard them talking. Hey, have you heard? One of those 2 spots in our school's Qingdao Martial Arts School has been internalized. Are you on the Village Pass network? The whole school has been spreading the word for a long time. And do you know who that person is on the inside? I've heard that the guy is. Zhang Zhe didn't hear the latter words clearly, and those 2 men passed by. The internal candidate. Zhang Zhe pondered, it seems that I only have one chance to enter the Qing University Martial Arts School. I don't know if it's because the martial arts exam is approaching and many people want to test their true level, but today inside the school's martial arts hall, it's overcrowded. Zhang Zhe took the cleaning tools and cleaned up in the crowd, but because there were too many people, many places had just been cleaned up and then were trampled dirty again. It seems that I can't go home early today. Zhang Zhe sighed helplessly. He couldn't leave until the school martial arts center was cleaned up, so he had to stand aside and wait for the students to leave. Just then, the door of the school martial arts center was suddenly pushed open, and a group of girls walked in. Each of these girls had a perfect body and a playful appearance, and they immediately attracted the attention of the entire crowd. Crap! Where did all these beautiful women come from? Any one of them is a heavenly beauty. They're miles ahead of our school's schoolgirls. Whoa, I like the one in the pink plaid skirt, so cute. What aesthetic. The tall one on the right with the shaggy hair is the cute one. I still prefer the front and back, walking on the right, with the short dry hair and the one in the halter dress. Wow, she's looking over. A group of male students yelled and a few whistled liberally. Zhang Zhe stood aside and looked at them. They were indeed all beautiful women. He just didn't know, what were these beautiful women doing in the school martial arts center? The crowd consciously made a path for the beauties, and the tall, shawl-haired girl stepped forward and said aloud, our Missy is going to commandeer this place today, so all the idlers leave. The crowd was stunned. What was the situation? These beauties actually came to be clear? At once, a few boys expressed their dissatisfaction. On what grounds? This school martial arts center is a public place, why should I let you have it? Even if you're girls, or pretty girls, you can't be unreasonable, can you? That's it. In fact, it's okay to let us go, unless it's to be my girlfriend, he. The people around him roared with laughter as they listened. The long-haired beauty squinted at the boy who had just spoken, guffawed, and said, you're saying we're unreasonable? Well then, let's fight. If you win, we'll leave. If you lose, get lost right now. The boy on the other side hemmed and hawed and said, okay, let's add one more rule. If I beat you, you'll go on a date with me. What do you say? Good. It's a deal. The long-haired beauty ruffled her hair and said blandly, but if I win against you, you'll not only have to roll, but you'll have to learn to bark like a dog while doing so. The few remaining beauties looked at the boy with gloating eyes, as if he was bound to lose. How dare you challenge Lily, you really don't know how to write the word death. I'm so happy to hear the dogs barking again today. Men are animals that think with their lower bodies, no different from dogs. Zhang Zhe stood in the crowd, getting a headache. No way. Why are we fighting again? When am I going to get off work? The boy sneered and took off his tunic, revealing a toned muscular body as a couple of his buddies next to him shouted for him. Dabiao, make sure you take this little bitch down. We can't lose to a woman, don't disgrace our brothers. Point blank, don't make the little girls cry, ahaha. A group of people heckling, named Dabiao boy confidently waved his fist. His own strength is really not weak, but also awakened the B-level talent. Just now when the test, a punch also hit a good result of more than 450 pounds, although not to go to the Qingdao University of Martial Arts School, but the second-rate martial arts school is not a problem at all. On the contrary, the long-haired beauty on the opposite side of the room, with thin arms and legs and a weak look, everyone did not look at her favorably. Her sisters, on the other hand, had calm expressions and didn't seem worried at all. Come on, beautiful. Dabiao posed, emboldened, and waved at the long-haired beauty, saying, don't worry, I'll be merciful. The long-haired beauty named He Lily smiled sweetly and stepped forward gracefully with her two long legs. She stood proudly and said, you'd better take out your full strength, otherwise, you'll lose ugly. Haha, I want to see how powerful you are. Saying that, Dabiao steeply stepped forward and slammed his fist into Lily Ho's chest. He Lily snorted coldly, her body instantly took a step back to avoid Big Biao's fist, then, her straight and slender right leg lifted up, lightning fast and drew towards Big Biao's right cheek. Hey! Dabiao immediately raised his arm in defense. He had thought that He Lily's leg didn't have much force, after all, she was a petite little girl, but when he felt the power of He Lily's leg, his face suddenly changed. Snap! Whoosh! Ah! Dabiao's entire body flew out horizontally. Not only that, his arm was completely deformed by He Lily's leg. Obviously both arm bones were broken by the kick. Puff! Dabiao fell heavily to the ground, his head hitting the floor, and he fainted for a moment. Hiss! The entire audience sucked in a breath of cold air. That's a lot of girl power overkill. Zhang Zhe narrowed his eyes. He could feel that the strength of He Lily's leg just now was at least 1,000 pounds. Otherwise, it's impossible to achieve that bone-breaking effect. Lily Ho dusted off her long legs and proudly asked the rest, anyone else? Dabiao's buddies looked at each other in dismay. Dabiao was the strongest among them, even Dabiao was kicked by He Lily to the point of breaking bones and tendons, their fate would only be worse. Seeing that no one dared to challenge again, He Lily took a bottle of ice-cold mineral water from her sister next to her and walked over to the unconscious Dabiao. A stream of water was thrown directly in front of Dabiao. Well. Dabiao was awakened by the cold water. He was just about to get up when a sharp pain came from his arms, and he realized that both of his arms had been broken. You Big Biao's face was pale. He no longer dared to molest He Lily in front of him, and even, he felt fear deep inside. Are these still women? The strength is surprisingly more powerful than men. The favorites are all very beautiful. Really demonic. In fact, not only did Dabiao think this way in his heart, the rest of the people present also thought the same thing in their hearts. Awake? Now, fulfill the agreement we just made. He Lily looked condescendingly at Dabiao, her eyes icy with contempt. Dabiao gritted his teeth, and in the end, he honored his agreement and escaped from the school martial arts hall in a sorry state while learning to bark like a dog. Because of the invasion of monsters in the magic cave, learning from the Dixia country to practice martial arts has become a trend, and also often occurs in martial arts duels. Generally speaking, as long as both parties are willing and there are no serious consequences, such as death or serious injury, the police will turn a blind eye. This is the case in society, and even more so on campus, except that there are even more restrictions. Like today's situation, it was considered a martial arts competition between the two sides, and He Lily had only broken both of Dabiao's arms, which wasn't considered too serious of an injury. As long as the physical attributes were a little bit better, it would usually heal in 10 days. Therefore, no one will hold Lily Ho responsible. The girl in the plaid skirt looked around and yelled, "Hey, how come so many people haven't left yet? Do they all want to compete with us?" After saying that, she suddenly swung out a fist violently, right on the force measuring machine next to her, and a muffled bang was heard, followed by a number appearing on it: 855 pounds. When the crowd took a look, they were in a panic and left the school martial arts center. Kidding aside, Ahi Lily was scary enough, but I didn't expect this plaid skirt girl to be even more scary, with a punch of more than 800 pounds. This score has far exceeded the admission line of Qingda Martial Arts School. Zhang Zhe noticed that the girl with the plaid skirt had a delicate copper brooch pinned on her chest, which was actually the emblem of Qingda Martial Arts School. No wonder the strength is so strong. So they are all students of Qing University Martial Arts School. Zhang Zhe's heart was suddenly clear, but he was still wondering what these Qing University Martial Arts School students were doing running to his high school and what's with their first lady. Could it be that is also a student at this school? Just as Zhang Zhe was thinking, he suddenly heard someone shouting at him, "Hey! That one over there with the broom, yeah, that's you. Why aren't you leaving yet?" Zhang Zhe froze for a moment as he looked around and was shocked to realize that in the entire school martial arts hall, other than him, a boy, there was surprisingly no one left. And across the room, the girls were staring at him with disdain. Why is this person stupid? However, the look is still quite handsome. Well, it's true that it's a little bit handsome, but compared to Mr. Shah, it's still that much worse. Hey, can the two of them be compared? Teacher Xiao is the #1 beautiful man in our Qingda Martial Arts School. This kid is at most #2. He Lily frowned and said, "Don't be nymphomaniacs, you guys, hurry up and do something important. Missy will be coming over in a while. We have to rush to clear out all the people before she comes here." After saying that, he Lily looked at Zhang Zhe and said nonchalantly, "Say it, are you going to go out on your own, or am I going to beat you out?" Huh? Zhang Zhe raised his eyebrows and grunted, "Sorry, I'm not going anywhere today." "Oh, I forgot to mention, I'm the cleaner here, I can't get off work until the trash is cleaned up." Zhang Zhe's gaze was fixed on He Lily in front of him. Although this girl was very pretty, her tone was too arrogant and cocky to the extreme, causing Zhang Zhe's dissatisfaction, so the garbage he just said was directed at He Lily. He Lily's face suddenly sank, and she said in a cold voice, "You dare to say I'm trash? Oh, boy, you have a lot of guts. How dare you offend the students of Qingda Martial Arts School? Let me, a senior sister, educate you on what it means to respect your seniors." Chapter 106, Sister, I'll eat you sooner or later. Zhang Zhe rolled his eyes and said, "You're not my schoolmate, and I don't have a senior with such trashy character as you." He Lily burst into a rage. She was just about to have a fit when the girl in the plaid skirt suddenly came out and advised, "Hey, Lily, you're at least a martial arts student from Qingdao University, so don't bully this janitor's brother, let me persuade him." Afterward, she twisted her waist to come in front of Zhang Zhe and said with a smile, "Brother, be a good boy and listen to your sisters, go home from work, some other day, my sister will take you to Yunding to play O." After the plaid skirt finished speaking, she even raised her hand to touch Zhang Zhe's face, living up to the appearance of a nymphomaniac sister. The few remaining girls saw her like this, each with a playful smile on their faces, as if they were not surprised. "Is this to molest me?" Zhang Zhe was speechless for a while. He immediately took a step back to avoid the salty piggy hand of the plaid skirt, and said indifferently, "I'm sorry, I've already said that I can't get off work until I've cleaned up this place, and I have to be able to afford the salary that the school pays me." Seeing that Zhang Zhe actually avoided her hand, the plaid skirt suddenly had a displeased expression and said with a cold face, "You're not very well behaved, brother, so be careful of your sister's spanking." He Lily couldn't stand it anymore and said angrily, "Fangya, don't bother talking to him, let me take care of him, everyone get ready to greet Missy." Fangya skimmed her mouth and looked at Zhang Zhe with some regret, saying, "It's too bad that he looks so handsome and will be beaten into a pig's head by Lily in a while." It's still not clear who will be beaten into a pig's head. Zhang Zhe coldly snorted. He had already weighed the gap between himself and He Lily just now, and the chances of winning were still there. But, after all, the other party was a martial arts student from Qing University and was a few years older than Zhang Zhe, so caution was necessary. Right, it's just the right time to try out the kung fu inside the notes Lu Yueying gave me. Zhang Zhe's heart stirred. Lu Yueying's notebook contained a type of kung fu, and although the name of the kung fu was not labeled, there were detailed notes and demonstrations for each move, and Zhang Zhe felt as if it was purposely written for him to see. He had been studying and learning in the last few days, and although he hadn't practiced in real life, his theoretical knowledge was already solid, and he believed that after a few drills, he would be able to integrate it. Fanya was pushed aside by He Lily. She was still muttering under her breath, "It's so stupid to go against us." A couple of the girls next to her were talking about it as well. "Look at this kid's body, it's not as strong as the one called what's-his-name, Dabiao just now, so I guess it's just an embroidered pillow. I bet a move to be kicked unconscious by Lily." "Lily still uses her legs? I guess I can settle it with my fists, after all, this kid is too weak." "Yeah, Lily's strongest point is her legs. It's too cruel to use her legs on this kid. I think it's more humane to use her fists." "Lily, try not to hit him in the face." The last sentence was shouted by Fanya. He Lily coldly kept her face silent. She hated boys. She always felt that God's creation of such disgusting creatures was a big mistake. How nice it was to have only them females in the world. Therefore, she never accepts any male advances, and is even more respectful of men. "Since you're not going to do anything until you've toasted me, then I'll be rude." He Lily lifted her rounded right leg and assumed a déjà vu stance. Zhang Zhe felt that this stance was very much like the stance of those Muay Thai masters in Taigua, in his previous life. It seems that this He Lily is good at using her legs. I remember that in that notebook of Lu Yueying, there are a few moves that are specialized in dealing with legwork. Zhang Zhe reviewed them in his mind before putting down the cleaning tools in his hand and striding forward. "I'm ready, come on." Zhang Zhe stood with his legs steady, his left hand behind his back, and his right hand stretched out in an inviting gesture. "Humph." He Lily hummed, her figure flashed steeply, and in an instant, she arrived in front of Zhang Zhe from 3 meters away. At the same time, her right leg also viciously jerked towards Zhang Zhe's right cheek, just like before, when she dealt with Dabiao. She wanted to whip Zhang Zhe away. The light in Zhang Zhe's eyes exploded, and his movements were equally as fast as lightning. Before He Lily's right leg drew to his own, he bent down and dodged, and at the same time, his left leg bent, and his right leg made a horizontal less than 1,000, directly sweeping into He Lily's other standing leg. Brush. Snap. Ah. He Lily instantly felt unsteady underneath, and the whole person directly leaned back and over, and with a thud, she directly fell to the ground. Fanya and the rest of the girls who were watching from afar immediately revealed a look of surprise. They were a bit skeptical if they had just seen it wrong. He Lily was actually knocked down by Zhang Zhe with a single move. It seemed different from what they had presumed before. He Lily immediately stood up with a carp. Her face had changed. Her previous contempt was replaced with gravity. She gritted her teeth and said, "Very well. You've made me get serious." Zhang Zhe bristled and said, "You'd better fight me seriously, otherwise, you'll lose ugly." He Lily felt that Zhang Zhe's words sounded familiar, then she reacted. Wasn't this what she had said to Dabiao before? It was actually given to her by Zhang Zhe in turn. Damn it. He Lily's pretty face was covered with anger as she rushed to Zhang Zhe once again, one of her right legs like a whirlwind, launching a fierce attack on Zhang Zhe. Sweep. Side kick. Roundhouse kick. Sweeping leg. Lily Ho had practically put out all of her best kung fu. However, Zhang Zhe was like a dexterous rabbit, avoiding all her attacks. Not only that, Zhang Zhe actually had the strength left to launch a counterattack against Lily He. This kid is so fast. Moreover, the dodging stance is also very special. He Lily's heart was getting more and more shocked. Her leg attack speed wasn't slow in the first place, even the family head had praised her, but, today, she couldn't even touch this kid. Moreover, what was even more mind-boggling to He Lily was why the kung fu Zhang Zhe had performed looked so familiar. It seems that Has seen it before. Fanya and the others beside him also had puzzled looks on their faces. The move that brat just performed seems to be dark clouds covering the moon? The dragon swinging its tail. I still remember this move, both the family head and the eldest miss used it. And the footwork he used to avoid Lily's attack just now, it's very much like Willow moving with the wind. What's this kid's origin, and why does he know our family master's kung fu? That's right, the kung fu that Zhang Ze used to deal with Lily, he actually came from the kung fu recorded in Lu Yuan's notes. At first, he was still a little rusty, but as the battle continued, he used it more and more skillfully, and even at the end, he had reached the point where his mind was moving at will. This kid, so powerful. Lily's forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat. Almost all the attacking moves she could use were cracked by Zhang Ze, while Zhang Ze casually made a move, forcing her to scramble and dodge, and several times, she was almost knocked down by Zhang Ze. If it wasn't for her superior physical fitness, I'm afraid she would have been defeated long ago. Fanya saw it clearly and secretly screamed, "No good, Lily is going to lose. This kid can even use our family master's kung fu, it's normal for Lily to lose." A few of the remaining girls also looked worried. However, Lily has always been strong, she doesn't like to admit defeat, and even more so, she doesn't like to bow down to men, so she has been gritting her teeth. But Zhang Ze didn't want to continue to spend time with her. It was now 6:40 p.m, any further delay would affect his ability to enter the magic realm. Thus, Zhang Ze intentionally sold a break, and the eager to win Lily really took the bait. Zhang Ze made a false move, and then with a smooth stroke, he sent Lily flying with a palm strike. Lily retreated 7 or 8 steps back before stabilizing her body. Zhang Ze did not hit her hard, so she was not seriously injured, but her face was unusually ugly. This was the first time she had lost to a man other than the head of the family and Mr. Xiao. It's a disgrace. Lily Ho almost gritted her silver teeth. Alright, the winners and losers have been decided, stop fighting. Zhang Ze picked up the cleaning tools on the ground again and blandly said, "Don't you guys just want to use this area? In fact, if you guys speak politely, I'll let you have it when I clean up the hygiene, so why bother to make a move?" Seeing Zhang Ze start cleaning again, Lily stopped in front of him at once and shouted angrily, "Hey! I'm not convinced, let's continue." "No more fighting, it's meaningless." Zhang Ze shook his head and said, "You're not my opponent at all." "What did you say?" Lily was about to rush up and strike again, but Fanya stopped her. "Fanya, you let go of me, I'm going to teach this bastard a lesson." Lily had already fallen into a state of madness, she had a strong sense of self-esteem, where could she be subjected to Zhang Ze's cold words? Fanya shook her head and said, "Let's stop here for today. Just now Missy's side called and said that she's not coming today for something, so let's hurry back as well." "Huh?" Lily froze for a moment. She didn't dare to disobey the orders of the eldest lady, so she only grunted, squinted at Zhang Ze, and said angrily, "Kid, what's your name?" "What? You still want to find trouble with me?" Zhang Ze frowned, he really wasn't interested in getting entangled with these boring women, and immediately said, "No comment." "Humph. I'll find out your name." Lily gritted her teeth, anger burning in her eyes, and said, "Sooner or later, I'm going to step on you and make you learn how to bark." "Nima. You like dogs so much, go learn how to bark yourself." Zhang Ze couldn't help but spit out seeing that Lily was about to have another attack. Fanya and the others pulled and pushed her out of the school martial arts center. "Brother, you've performed well today, sister will remember you." Before leaving, Fanya suddenly turned around and threw a wink at Zhang Ze. She licked her tongue and smiled, "Sister, I'll eat you sooner or later." Zhang Ze. How come these schoolgirls are all weirder than each other? After these girls left, 7 or 8 heads emerged from the gate, which turned out to be those students who had been driven away earlier. In fact, they didn't go far, but ran outside and quietly peeked inside. As a result, they witnessed the scene where Zhang Ze defeated Lily He. The group was again shocked and in awe. That janitor was amazing, he beat that violent woman. This person seems to be a student of our school, usually unassuming. I didn't expect that, but he's an expert. Who cares what he is, anyway, he's good for getting rid of those arrogant pussies. What a disgrace, to our men. Zhang Zhe used his fastest speed to clean up the school martial arts center, then hurriedly left the school and headed home. It was hard to return home, and after casually grabbing a bite to eat, he logged into the magic realm. Yesterday when I got off the line, I had already said goodbye to everyone and broke into the 9th layer of the demonic domain together, and this is already half an hour late. Zhang Zhe looked at the time and shook his head helplessly. As soon as he entered the magic realm, Zhang Zhe received many missed messages, all from the giant god as well as one arrow through the heart and the others. Zhang Zhe had to write back to them and learned that because of his delay, everyone had already begun exploring the 9th layer of the demonic domain under the command of the giant god, and had now entered the temple and could not get out for a while. Guess we'll just have to wait for them here. Although Zhang Zhe had a summoned entourage, he was not arrogant enough to the point where he thought he could enter the demon realm on his own. Just when Zhang Zhe was bored, someone suddenly said next to him, "Lord Chairman, I've found you." Zhang Zhe was surprised to turn around and see that it was an archer adventurer with the name of the magic domain. "It's not you. You're a member of my guild?" Zhang Zhe asked suspiciously. There wasn't much of a guild system in the magic realm, so it was usually the adventurers who formed themselves, and everyone was added as friends and contacted through the friend channel. "Yes, I'm a member under you, Chairman Sama." "Not yours," truly nodded his head repeatedly and said with conviction. Zhang Zhe frowned as he looked at the densely packed list in his friend bar. Because he had friended so many people last time, there were now hundreds of people in the list, and fortunately, there was a search option, so Zhang Zhe quickly found the name that was not yours. "What are you looking for me for?" Zhang Zhe asked. "Not yours," truly was busy saying, "I have a few friends who are trapped in a valley in the 7th level of the demon domain, and there are still 7 or 8 centaur heavy cavalry outside the valley. I risked my life to escape to look for rescue, and they are still trapped inside. The situation is very critical. Please go save them, Lord President." Zhang Zhe narrowed his eyes and looked up and down at "Not you." Harm is not to be done, but defense is not to be done. He must figure out if what this Nanyu said is true. "Chairman Sama, I definitely didn't use lie. If I lie to you, I shall not be allowed to die." "Not yours," truly patted his chest with force and assured. Zhang Zhe saw that it wasn't you who had red eyes and was agitated and didn't seem to be lying, so he asked, "Tell us the specifics. How many of you are there and how were you trapped in the valley by the centaur heavy cavalry?" Seeing Zhang Zhe loosening his tongue, Not Yours truly was happy, and busily said, "We didn't participate in one arrow through the heart and their actions because we were too weak, and wanted to grind our way through the 7th floor. Who knows, halfway through, we were pursued by 5 centaur heavy cavalrymen, and we panicked and fled into a valley, and as a result, we realized that that valley was a dead end. But, fortunately, there was a deserted sentry tower in the valley, so a few of us climbed up." Not Yours truly sighed and said, "Even though we're safe for now, we can't stay stuck up there and not come down." Zhang Zhe nodded and asked, "Then how did you escape?" Chapter 107, Come With Me to Kill. Not Yours truly said, "At that time, the centaur heavy cavalry was attracted by my companions with their bows and arrows, and I took the opportunity to jump down from the sentry tower, and fell half dead, but I managed to escape." He grabbed Zhang Zhe's arm and begged, "Mr. Chairman, you can't just see them die, they are all members of our Bowman Guild." The Bowman Guild had just been established, and the members were meeting difficulties, so Zhang Zhe, who was the president, naturally couldn't ignore it. So he thought about it and said, "Now I'm the only one, I'm afraid I can't save them. Why don't we wait for everyone to come back, and then I'll..." "Then it's too late." Not Yours truly was filled with anxiety as he said, "Lord President, can't you summon followers? I don't see any problem at all in dealing with those few centaur heavy cavalrymen. Moreover, we can also synergize from the side. You should not hesitate, in case any of those heavy centaur cavalry call for more of their kind, then my friends will be in even more danger. So then, I'll go with you and check it out." After saying that, Zhang Zhe sent a message to the giant god and one arrow through the heart and the others before heading to the 8th level of the demon domain with Not Yours together. Lord President, I'll show you the way. Not Yours truly said attentively. Zhang Zhe followed Not Yours truly away from the altar and walked towards the depths of the grassland, and soon, they arrived outside the valley that Not Yours truly had mentioned. Zhang Zhe raised his eyes and looked around. This valley was not quite what he had imagined. Only to see that at the entrance of the valley, there was actually a wooden rampart, with 2 huge wooden gates opening outwards. It was obvious that these were man-made structures. This place doesn't look like an ordinary valley, ah. Zhang Zhe muttered secretly in his heart. Entering within the valley, Zhang Zhe again saw many wooden crates and piles of weapons and equipment on both sides of the road, which were all used by those centaur cavalrymen. Apart from that, Zhang Zhe also saw many flagpoles with colorful flags flying on them, and the patterns of the colorful flags were the same as the ones he had seen in the centaur fortress. Feeling more and more out of place, Zhang Zhe asked to the next person who was not you, "Are you sure you're not going the wrong way? It doesn't look like a valley to me, but rather like a military fortress." Not Yours truly bites out, "Absolutely right, Mr. Chairman, come with me, my friends, and they just sent me a message saying that they can't hold out anymore." With the idea of saving someone's life, Zhang Zhe had no choice but to continue onward all the way after Not You, and they soon arrived within the valley. The space inside this valley was very spacious, and Zhang Zhe visually estimated that it was at least the size of 3 or 4 soccer fields, and at the end of the valley, there was indeed a sentry tower standing, and several adventurers were facing the Lord Chairman, it's right there. Not Yours truly said hurriedly, "Let's go over and save them." Take it easy. Zhang Zhe carefully observed the situation on the opposite side, only to see 7 centaur heavy cavalrymen running back and forth below the sentry tower, and since they were unable to mount the sentry tower, they could do nothing to the adventurers on the sentry tower, and could only swing their battle blades and roar in anger. 7 centaur heavy cavalry. Zhang Zhe weighed, "My centaur general should have no problem." So, he summoned the centaur general. At this moment, Zhang Zhe's summoning space only had a heaven-swallowing frog, a tide caller, a 2-headed giant and a centaur heavy cavalry left. The sky-swallowing frog was of little use, and the tide waker was also brittle, dying at the touch of it, and although it could return blood to Zhang Zhe, the return effect of a single tide waker was too small, so it was basically useless. The 2-headed giant could have fought, but he was stupid and clumsy, and couldn't run fast enough to give him much of an advantage against the heavy centaur cavalry, which had great maneuverability and flexibility. Only General Centaur was the most suitable candidate, so Zhang Zhe directly summoned him. Crap! Centaur General! Not Your Mate was startled to see the tall and powerful Centaur General suddenly appear behind Zhang Zhe. "Don't be afraid, he's my summoned monster." Zhang Zhe soothed, then ordered the Centaur General to launch an attack on the Centaur cavalry under the sentry tower. "Your order, I receive it." The Centaur General's 2 front hooves were raised high, and then, pulling a puff of smoke, he charged straight towards the opposite target. Those 7 Centaur heavy cavalry also spotted the Centaur General, and they immediately left the sentry tower and rushed up to meet the Centaur General. The 2 sides were suddenly engaged in a fierce battle. "You take the opportunity to call your friends down," Zhang Zhe barked at Not You, and then he joined the fray, supporting the Centaur heavy cavalry from afar with his longbow. Not Yours truly squinted his eyes at the Centaur General and then at Zhang Zhe, who then ran over in the direction of the sentry tower. Not Yours truly mounted the sentry tower, and the remaining 3 adventurers hurriedly asked, "This guy can actually summon a boss. What should we do?" This matter did here surprise me, however, it's not a big problem. A trace of grimness appeared on the face of Not You, as he grunted, "As long as he enters this valley, he won't be able to run out alive." "Are the assassins already in place?" One of the adventurers nodded. "The assassin has been lurking around all this time, now let him do it. Wait for now, when the Centaur army returns, take advantage of the chaos to give Rakshasa a fatal blow." Not Yours truly sneered, "Even if we can't kill him, he won't be able to survive for long in front of an army of hundreds of centaurs." An adventurer raised a concern: what if, in case, this guy uses a random teleportation scroll to escape? That knight is not afraid. Not yours truly shook his head and said, someone on the forums tested it long ago. The random teleportation scroll's teleportation range is within a circle of 500 meters to 1,000 meters, and this valley is at least 2,000 to 3,000 meters in circumference. Even if he uses the random teleportation scroll, he won't be able to escape from this valley, and by then, the Centaur cavalry will track down the hatred and find him, and he'll be finished as usual. The other few adventurers also revealed joyful colors after hearing this. One of them gave a thumbs up and praised, "Boss is really wise. This time, if we get rid of Rakshasa, we'll be able to get that big bounty." Yeah, this Rakshasa doesn't know what the hell he did to offend the Aurora gang, and now the bounty has been raised to $15 million. Boy, I've never seen so much money in my life. Being offered so much money deserved his death. After taking this money, I'll emigrate to country. MIV heard that there are high-ranked demon realm powerhouses guarding there, and it's 100 times safer than the great summer country. A group of sinister adventurers joked and laughed as they stared at the sentry tower. The Centaur general's combat power was really not something to be reckoned with. A sweeping circle of his lance knocked back those 7 Centaur heavy cavalry several paces away, and it was estimated that it wouldn't take long to wipe out all of these enemies. There was absolutely no need for Zhang Zhe to worry. However, Zhang Zhe looked over at the sentry tower and muttered in his heart, "Why haven't they come down from the sentry tower after all this time? Not you. What are they up to now that the opportunity is so rare?" Suddenly, Zhang Zhe felt a dark shadow flash past in his afterglow. He immediately turned back to look and, as a result, found nothing. Nope. There must be someone. Zhang Zhe's heart sank. As a traveler, his mental power was much higher than that of an ordinary person, and his 5 senses were much sharper. He was sure that someone definitely walked past him just now. It's an assassin. An occupation immediately flashed through Zhang Zhe's mind. Could it be that they met danger if not you? That's why it's late to come back. In the magic realm, the fish and dragons are mixed up, and there are a lot of people who live off of killing people. This assassin might have come here to take advantage of the fire, but Zhang Zhe wasn't afraid of him. But it wasn't easy to say the same about people like Not You. He was worried that something had happened to someone other than you. So, Zhang Zhe immediately sent a message to Not Yours Truly, asking about the situation on his side, but no information came back. Zhang Zhe's heart sank. Is it not you, and other people in trouble have been killed? Just then, the figure turned to Zhang Zhe again, and Zhang Zhe's mind moved, pretending not to notice and leaning towards the Centaur general. The assassin did take the bait and leaned in after him. Centaur General, Thunder Shock Stomp. Zhang Zhe quickly issued a command, and the Centaur General immediately unleashed Thunder Shock Tramp, and a muffled rumble was heard as the earth trembled and shook along with it. In addition to the 7 Centaur heavy cavalrymen who were shaken to their core, a male assassin also revealed himself, dazed in place, apparently also affected by the Thunder Shock Tap. "General Centaur, kill him." Zhang Zhe gave his orders without mercy. He would not be merciful to his enemies. -2774. General Centauri. -3191. General Centauri. The Centaur general immediately reversed his direction and stabbed the assassin to death with 2 sharp thrusts of his lance. After finishing off the assassin, Zhang Zhe immediately reversed his direction and ran towards the sentry tower, and when he reached the sentry tower, I waited for a while, but then I saw a few heads emerge from the sentry tower, none other than you and the others. What are you guys up to? Come down quickly, things are not right here. Zhang Zhe didn't realize that he had been duped and was still concerned about the other party. Do it. Kill him. Not Yours Truly saw that Zhang Zhe had actually come under the sentry tower, and just now, another message had come from the assassin's side, saying that Zhang Zhe seemed to have sensed his presence. So after some thought on the part of Not You, the decision was made to go for it immediately. A burst of arrows shot towards Zhang Zhe. Zhang Zhe was shocked in his heart and immediately dodged, but a few of them still hit him, causing several hundred points of damage. Not you. You lied to me. Zhang Zhe snapped out of it and looked angrily at Not Yours on the sentry tower, who laughed maniacally and said, Lord President, don't blame me, you can only blame yourself. Why did you offend the people of Aurora? Zhang Zhe narrowed his eyes and asked in a deep voice, are you guys here for the bounty? That's right, your head is now worth $15 million. With so much money, we're really jealous. Not Yours truly revealed a vicious smile and said, so, please go to hell. Be peaceful in your next life and don't cause any more trouble. Zhang Zhe raised his hand and shot an arrow at Not Yours. Not Yours hastily dodged and as a result, the arrow hit his shoulder, causing him to grin in pained shit. Rakshasa. You're dead today. He cursed, while having the rest of the adventurers shoot arrows at Zhang Zhe. Zhang Zhe sank his face to avoid the arrow and said, it's not you, I won't let you go. Once I dispose of those 7 centaur heavy cavalrymen, I will come back to settle the score with you. Not Yours truly had a cocky face and said, don't you dream. To tell you the truth, this is not an ordinary valley, this is actually a centaur's military camp. Zhang Zhe narrowed his eyes, no wonder he had felt that something was not right here before, and sure enough. Not Yours truly said triumphantly, we have put in a lot of effort to deal with you. This barracks is where we tracked behind the centaur army all the way and risked our lives to find it, just to trap you to death here. At this time of the day, the centaur army should be coming back soon, and you can't leave even if you want to, unless, all by yourself, you kill a few hundred centaur cavalrymen. Not Yours truly had a scowl on his face and laughed, but are you capable of that? Zhang Zhe narrowed his eyes as he suddenly felt the ground shaking slightly, as if 1,000 armies were approaching the place. He turned around and saw, and sure enough, a large group of dark shadows appeared at the entrance of the valley, none other than the centaur cavalry, numbering about 500. Armed with longbows, these centaur cavalrymen advanced slowly with a neat and energetic stride. It wouldn't take 10 minutes to come to Zhang Zhe. They're back. The centaur cavalry is back. Ha ha ha. Rakshasa, you're dead. Not Yours truly let out a maniacal laugh, as if he saw countless amounts of money flying towards him. Quickly, turn on the video, record the entire process of Rakshasa being killed by the centaur cavalry, don't spare a single detail, and then send it to the Gold Master as evidence for us to get the bounty. Don't rush, I'm already recording. Ha ha ha, I'm going to be rich. A few assholes shouted in excitement. As far as they were concerned, Zhang Zhe was already a dead man. Zhang Zhe returned to the centaur general and assisted him in destroying all the remaining 2 centaur heavy cavalry. The way out has been blocked by the centaur army. Zhang Zhe raised his eyes and looked around. This valley is surrounded by mountains on 3 sides, and there is only one exit, so it seems that the other party has already calculated this. He opened his backpack and found a random teleportation scroll, focusing his attention on it. Do we use the random teleportation scroll? Yes or no? Zhang Zhe. To be honest, this was the first time Zhang Zhe had been tricked in the magic realm. We're taking advantage of his kindness and zeal. The anger in Zhang Zhe's heart could no longer be contained, he wanted revenge. He wanted to make people like Not You pay. So, he didn't want to escape. Thus, Zhang Zhe closed his backpack and shifted his gaze to the centaur general beside him. Master, what are your orders? The centaur general lowered his noble head and asked respectfully. Zhang Zhe rolled over and mounted the centaur general's back, his gaze looking towards the distant sentry tower, his voice like a demon in the 9 abyss, come with me to kill. Chapter 108, This man is not Simple Nanyu and the others were still watching. They had thought that Zhang Zhe would use the random teleportation scroll to escape. After all, that's what any normal person would do when they met such a situation. As a result, they realized that Zhang Zhe had actually reversed his direction and ran directly towards them. Oops. What the hell? Why didn't he use the random teleportation scroll to escape? Self-destructive? Trying to kill yourself? Perhaps he's trying to beg us for mercy, hoping we'll let him mount the sentry tower to hide from those centaur hordes? Whatever, he's dead today anyway. Let's just wait for the money. Haha. A few people stood on the high sentry tower and looked at Zhang Zhe with a sneer. Zhang Zhe ran all the way to a position that was still 500 to 600 meters away from the sentry tower, which was beyond the range of the bows and arrows of Not Yu and the others, so he did not have to worry about being attacked. The grin on his face grew even wider as Not Yours truly poked his head out and watched the Centaur army in the distance pulling in rolling smoke as it approached this way. Rakshasa, have you resigned yourself to your fate? Or do you want to beg for mercy from me? The corner of Not Yours' mouth brought up a cold smile and said, Don't dream, I won't save you. Unless you take more money out. Zhang Zhe's face was calm and he didn't seem to be flustered as he calmly said, You've got it wrong, I'm here to kill you all. You guys took advantage of my kindness to trick me, humph, you're bound to pay the price. You're going to kill us? Not Yours truly laughed, You're mistaken, aren't you? Right now, the one who is going to die is you. Those 500+ Centaur cavalrymen in the back aren't vegetarians, so you'll have to finish them off first and then come back to us. Zhang Zhe smiled slightly and said, You mean those Centaur cavalrymen? They are not going to hurt me. As he was talking, those Centaur cavalrymen had already arrived not far behind Zhang Zhe and had spotted him, and at once charged towards him. Rakshasa, today is your end. Not Yours truly shouted in excitement as he watched the Centaur army about to drown Zhang Zhe, but his smile suddenly came to an abrupt end. Only to see that when the Centaur cavalry rushed in front of Zhang Zhe, they did not launch an attack, but instead circled around him, each with a very respectful demeanor. What is going on? Not Your man stared at once, a puzzled look in his eyes. That's not right, the Centaur cavalry should be attacking Rakshasa. Why are they just circling around him and not attacking? Didn't you guys say he could summon followers? Could it be related to this? It can't be that he summoned all of these 500 or so Centaur cavalrymen, right? Are you stupid? If he could summon so many centaurs, wouldn't he have swept through the entire demon realm? The remaining few adventurers were also filled with confusion. They didn't know that the Zhang Zhe, who was surrounded in the center by the Centaur cavalry, had a subdued look on his face as he patted the Centaur general underneath him and said, Order these Centaur cavalry to surround the sentry tower. Yes, my lord. The Centaur general immediately waved a small red flag and gave orders to all the Centaur cavalry. That's right, the reason why these Centaur cavalrymen did not attack Zhang Zhe was because the Centaur general was using his skill, calling the three armies. Early on, when Zhang Zhe realized that he was surrounded by the returning Centaur army in the valley, he thought of this solution, and at the same time, he also carefully checked this, calling the three armies, skill of the Centaur general. Make sure there is no mistake, this skill can control any Centaur monster and there is no limit to the number of them. One must know that the Centaur general was the final boss of this layer of the demon domain, and he was also the general of the Centaur clan, with a supreme status and position, so he could deploy and control the Centaur cavalry at will. After making this discovery, Zhang Zhe immediately formulated a revenge plan, and he wanted to make people like Not You pay a heavy price. More than 500 Centaur cavalrymen saw the small red flag of the Centaur general and immediately reorganized their formation, like a tidal wave, rushing towards the side of the sentry tower. The people on the sentry tower were dumbfounded, and all of them looked horrified. Crap. What's with the Centaur cavalry coming at us? This isn't right. The first thing they saw was Rakshasa. The hate value should all be on Rakshasa. Why did they come to trouble us? Boss, what should we do? We're surrounded by Centaur cavalry. Several of the adventurers panicked and looked at Not You in unison. Not Yours truly was also in a cold sweat on his forehead. The current situation was completely out of his expectation. He had carefully planned this plan for a long time, thinking that it was seamless, and as long as Zhang Zhe fell into his trap, it would be hard to escape. But who would have thought that Zhang Zhe would actually be able to counterattack against all odds? Gave them a counter-encirclement. Shit. This Rakshasa is so hard to deal with. Not Yours truly gritted his teeth and pacified his men. Don't panic. We're on the sentry tower, those Centaur cavalry can't get up. An adventurer cried out, but we can't get down either. Are we going to be stuck here forever? The faces of the remaining few were also ugly. If they didn't go offline at the altar, the next time they landed in the demon realm, they still appeared on this sentry tower, and if they messed up, they might be stuck here forever. That would be the end of their career in the magic realm. It won't. As long as Rakshasa leaves here, those centaur cavalrymen will automatically disperse. Let's find an opportunity later on. While the centaur army leaves the valley, we'll quietly leave again, there won't be any danger. Not Yours truly thought about it and said. A few of the henchmen listened and felt that it was Not You who was making sense, so they relaxed as well. Not Yours truly poked his head around the sentry tower to observe, a smug grin playing at the corners of his mouth. Rakshasa. You stupid ass. Don't you realize that these four-legged losers can't climb stairs? Not You let out a loud laugh. I think it would be better for you to teach them how to climb a building on 4 legs first. Ha ha ha. Zhang Zhe snorted lightly and said indifferently, I never said that I would let them climb the stairs. After saying that, Zhang Zhe spoke a few words to the centaur general. Only the centaur general suddenly changed to a small yellow flag and waved it hard. Why is that centaur general waving his flag again? And changed colors this time. An adventurer noticed the anomaly and said curiously. The other one's face suddenly changed drastically and shouted, Ouch crikey! Those centaur cavalry have changed their weapons. They even have bows and arrows. Sure enough, they saw those centaur cavalrymen taking out a longbow from behind them, then bending their bows and aiming their arrows at the adventurers on the sentry tower. Not Yours truly revealed a shocked expression at once. He definitely did not expect that these centaur cavalrymen could actually use bows and arrows. It's the centaur general, he's the one who gave the order to these centaur cavalry. Seeing the centaur general who was still waving his flag, it was Not You who understood at once, but what was the use of understanding? Release the arrows. Shoot them to death. Zhang Zhe's cold voice came over. The centaur general immediately gave the order, and more than 500 centaur cavalrymen loosened their bowstrings, and an arrow flew up to the sentry tower. Whoosh! -511. Centaur cavalry. -378. Centaur cavalry. -507. Centaur cavalry. -492. Centaur cavalry. Ah! I'm hit with an arrow. Ouch! The damage is so high. Help! Spare me. I won't dare next time. We don't want the bounty, Lord Chairman, let us go. We don't want to die here. The few adventurers standing on the sentry tower were instantly shot by the chaotic arrows and screamed. However, the space above the open air of this sentry tower was so narrow that it could only accommodate 2 people standing, and now the 4 of them were crammed on top of it, with almost no room to turn around. The arrows still mercilessly landed on their bodies, bringing up patches of blood and countless damage values. 500 centaur cavalrymen took turns shooting arrows, not stopping for a moment, almost shooting the people inside the sentry tower into hedgehogs. 10 minutes later, there was no more movement above the sentry tower, and Zhang Zhe waved his hand to call a halt. At this time, countless arrows were stuck in the facade of the sentry tower, densely packed to show how fierce the firing was. Zhang Zhe came to the sentry tower, and as he ascended to the top, he saw that Not Yours and the others had already been killed by arrows. Not Yours truly was covered in arrows, his eyes were wide open, and at the last moment of his life, he saw Zhang Zhe standing in front of him. Remember the oath you made? Zhang Zhe said coldly. If I lie to you, I shall not die. Not You remembered what he had said at the time, though he already felt deep regret, but unfortunately it was too late. His life ended completely, and his body turned into a puff of green smoke that dissipated in place. Only the items from his backpack and the equipment he was wearing were left in place, and Zhang Zhe directly walked over and collected all the items before walking down the sentry tower. Remounting on the centaur general's back, Zhang Zhe, like the commander of the 3 armies, slightly waved his right arm, and behind him, more than 500 centaur cavalrymen, in a neat formation, followed Zhang Zhe and slowly left the valley. Taking Zhang Zhe to disappear outside the valley, a silhouette slowly revealed itself from a corner. It was a male assassin who wore a hood and couldn't see his face, but the pair of eyes that were exposed were cold and stern. Rakshasa. Difficult guy. He opened the communication interface and sent a message, "Quiet death, not you. Their operation failed. Dark monster, I've told you before, that Rakshasa is not easy to deal with. With just the few losers that aren't you, you won't be able to kill him at all. Mad Knife, what about the ones that aren't yours? Quiet death, all dead, killed by Centaur cavalrymen firing arrows indiscriminately. Gravedigger, shot by Centaur cavalry? How did they die at the hands of a monster? Quiet death, it's a long story, but in short, that Rakshasa was really good. A glimpse of light, did you have a video at the time? Send it over to me. Quiet death, there is." With that said, Quiet Death shared the video in the chat channel. For a while, everyone was clicking and watching. The chat channel was quiet after the video ended. Dark Monster, Nima, this guy is getting better and better. Surprisingly, he's even gotten his hands on an elite Centaur general. Boss, we can't just let it go any longer, it's going to be hard for us to eradicate him if this keeps up. Gravedigger, agreed, in the face of the enemy, not only calm but also courageous and resourceful. This person is not simple. Wild Blade, however, he has his weaknesses, too saintly and not ruthless enough. He doesn't refuse when someone asks for his help. If it were my old man, he would have told them to get lost. A glimmer of light, so, Rakshasa, and you are not the same kind of people. If he was like you, selfish and ruthless, I'm afraid he wouldn't have befriended the Liu family, much less formed some archers' guild. Wild Blade, boss, you're hurting me too much. Quiet Death, boss, what do we do with this Rakshasa next? A ray of dawn sitting on a small mountain of monster corpses, looking at the distant Demon King's castle, pondering for a moment, sent a message, Rakshasa is a talent, Aurora is now just the time to use people, find the time for me to go to meet him, so that he can join us. Zhang Zhe rode on the back of the Centaur general and led more than 500 Centaur cavalrymen as they came in a great hurry in the direction of the altar. Along the way, the monsters encountered were basically taken away by the Centaur army in one wave, and Zhang Zhe only needed to pick up the reward items after the battle. There were many human adventurers who saw this Centaur army from afar and dodged away in fear, but when they saw that Zhang Zhe was actually riding on a Centaur general and strutting through the ranks, each of them were dumbfounded. I'm not mistaken, am I? How did that adventurer get on a Centaur? What's going on here? Adventurers and monsters living in peace? That's not peaceful, is it? Both riding on the monster's back, clearly a master-servant relationship. Could that person control monsters? My goodness, and control such a large group. Isn't this fucking invincible? A group of us are exhausted, besieging a few Centaur cavalrymen, all almost hung up, people riding on the back of a Centaur, lying down and taking all the experience and rewards, really envious of me. There were a few good adventurers who trailed Zhang Zhe all the way to see what kind of god he was, but the number of people grew, and by the time Zhang Zhe reached the altar, he was followed by thousands of people. In front of them was Zhang Zhe leading more than 500 Centaur cavalrymen, followed by thousands of adventurers. The scene was a spectacular one. Since monsters approaching the altar would be attacked by the stone pillars next to the altar that would unleash magical attacks on them, Zhang Zhe had the Centaur general disband all these Centaur cavalry in advance. Seeing a large group of Centaur cavalry turning around and charging towards the adventurers, it scared them, and they immediately dispersed and fled away in a mess. Zhang Zhe retrieved the Centaur general and returned to the altar, and at this moment, one arrow through the heart and the giant god and the others also returned from the temple, and they sent a message to Zhang Zhe. Lord President, the 9th level of the demon domain is too perverse. There are traps everywhere. Especially the pagans inside, every one of them is crazy. Chapter 109, You two don't look anything like brother and sister. Zhang Zhe remembered that in the guide to the magic realm about the 9th level of the magic realm, it did mention that the main monsters on this level were pagans. No one knows what these monsters believe in, it's evil anyway. You can tell a thing or two from the murals in the temple. These infidels were of two kinds, those dressed in red and those dressed in green, and the two kinds differed somewhat in the manner of their attacks. Upon death, the bodies of the red-clothed cultists would mutate and transform into ugly monsters to continue fighting the adventurers, with their attacks and defenses increased dramatically, and the damage done to them by ordinary attacks was very limited. The green cultist is even more disgusting. This guy is not very strong in attack and defense. The adventurers can easily kill them, but, when they die, they will curse the adventurer who killed them. The types of curses include, but are not limited to, reduced defense, weakened attack, weakened speed, continuous bleeding, chaotic disorientation, and so on, numbering up to a dozen. And it lasts up to an hour. It's still based on the time in the magic realm, that is, even if you go offline, the curse time won't decrease unless you stay in the magic realm and wait for the curse time to end. Therefore, the adventurers were more reluctant to face the green-cloaked cultists as opposed to the red-cloaked cultists. This shit was too damn disgusting. The final boss, the Archbishop, is also a tough nut to crack, with poisonous snakes all over his room. The attacks of these vipers are poisonous, and once an adventurer is poisoned, he or she will continue to lose blood and must be detoxified immediately. When the vipers are destroyed, the Archbishop will strike. This guy uses black magic to attack the adventurer who is hit. The whole attribute is reduced to 0. This state lasts until the Archbishop is killed before it can be lifted. You think that's the end of it? When the Archbishop dies, he will enter the second stage, where he will be possessed by the evil god and turn into a giant evil creature to continue the battle with the adventurers. The guide to the magic realm reads, in order to defeat the Archbishop possessed by the evil god, a minimum of 10 or more adventurers, rated at the excellent level, are required to participate, otherwise, don't take the risk lightly. Aside from the Archbishop and his heretics, there are traps all over the temple, and while falling into one won't kill the adventurer outright, it can cause a lot of headaches. Therefore, one arrow through the heart and the others only penetrated a third of the way into the temple before they had to pull back. Zhang Zhe arrived at the altar of the 9th level of the demon domain and met with the giant god and one arrow through the heart, and he saw the cursed status on them. Attack speed reduced by 10%. Defense reduced by 15%. The giant god and the others looked conspicuous with negative statuses floating above their heads. We need the help of support profession adventurers who can eliminate negative statuses, otherwise, this level of the demon realm is impossible to fight. One night knowing Autumn was filled with anguish, and he, the worker behind the scenes, had also received a curse, recovery speed reduced by 20%. The number of auxiliary profession adventurers in the magic realm wasn't much, and they were all mostly adventurers like the little princess of money who could only restore blood, but not eliminate negative statuses. It's not easy to find auxiliary adventurers. The giant god also felt a headache. He did know a few, but they all had regular teams and were busy every day, so how could they specially run over to help? The grumpy Dragon King said, otherwise, let's buy the activation potion, drinking that can ignore any negative status, but there are drawbacks, that is, the amount of damage taken will be drastically increased, as well as, the price is a bit expensive. Little expensive? The little princess of money instantly rolled her eyes and said, a bottle of activation costs $5,000. It's simply a money grab. Moonlight Bunny also shook his head and said, this kind of potion is very scarce, and there are times when even if you have money, you can't buy it. We are so many people, the demand is too great. An arrow through the heart and other archers are also worried. Many of them are not very good family conditions, and because the profession of archers is not popular in the magic domain, cannot earn much money. After following Zhang Zhe for the past few days, their income had only picked up a bit, but for them to take out thousands and thousands of dollars to buy potions, many of them were really in pain. The potion treats the symptoms but not the root cause, and it's too costly and uneconomical. It's best to find a few auxiliary adventurers. Zhang Zhe clenched his chin and shook his head. Suddenly remembering something, he looked up at the crowd and asked suspiciously, how come we don't see Lui Weiing? Didn't she come today? She said that something came up at home temporarily and she won't be coming today. The giant god returned. Lu Family Manor, Private Martial Arts Dojo. Dressed in a clean white martial arts power suit, Lu Yuing stood on the spot, her brows slightly furrowed as she gazed at the girl across from her. Opposite her was a girl wearing a school uniform, 15 or 16 years old, about the same size than Lu Yuing, with a pill hair bun on her head. Combined with her doll-like face, she looked very cute. However, in her large, flickering eyes, there was a sly glint. "Cousin, I'm very stupid, you have to be merciful." The doll exuded a pitiful look that made people look at her and couldn't help but want to pity her. However, Lu Yuing had a stern face and said, "Tang Qiaowei, don't pretend in front of me." Jiangdong 40th World Campus Fighting Competition Champion, Qing University Martial Arts School admitted internal personnel, awakened SS-level talent genius, early to join the National Security Bureau entry list. Lu Yuing, as if counting, said a large series of titles. "How can a genius girl like you be stupid?" Tang Qiaowei blinked her eyes and suddenly smiled, saying, "He, I've always been low-key and don't like to flaunt it." Lu Yuing grunted in her heart and secretly said, "You're still low-key? Then there are no low-profile people in this world. Dad is worried that I won't be able to pass the placement test of Qing University Martial Arts School. He actually made me come to you to fight, he's too distrustful of me too." Tang Qiaowei sighed helplessly and said, "Cousin, do you think that a genius like me wouldn't be able to get into Class A?" Lu Yuing said with a serious face, "Don't be gullible and careless, let me tell you, Class A, it's really hard to get in. As far as I know, the 3-year sections of Qingda Martial Arts School, and the A class of each section are all hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Take the A class of the 2nd-year section that I'm in as an example. There are several people who are rated at a powerful level in the magic realm. In reality, they are also second-ranked magic domain powerhouses. These people, in the future, will be the pillars of the country, the objects of the country's key cultivation, with an unlimited future. Because of this, the Qing University Martial Arts School's selection of Class A students is extremely strict, and can even be said to be cruel." She took a deep breath and recalled, "I still remember that back when I was competing with other students for a place in Class A, I participated in a field exercise, and one of the students died in a fallen area. Not only that, but in the last session, when they went through with Class A's homeroom teacher, there were people who were beaten to the point of vomiting blood and even seriously injured." Tang Qiaowei, don't underestimate the placement test just because you think you're very strong, or else you'll probably suffer a big loss. Lu Yuing's earnest words didn't get Tang Qiaowei's attention. She just shrugged her shoulders and said, "Got it, you're just as long-winded as my father." She looked down at her watch and said, "Hurry up and get started, I've got a date to go out and sing tonight." Lu Yuing sighed in her heart as she took up a fighting stance, a stance of strict readiness. On the other hand, Tang Qiaowei on the opposite side just casually stood in place, craning her neck and moving her wrists, even if she was ready. In the next moment, the two playful figures flashed at the same time. Snap! Bodies staggered and fists and feet clashed. In an instant, the two of them went through a dozen moves. Phew! Lu Yuing returned to her original spot. She calmed her breathing and was extremely shocked inside. This cousin of hers has gotten stronger again. There are times when God is really unfair. You work your butt off to study hard and your grades are like snails, progressing slowly and possibly even going backwards. But some people, all day long hanging around, dashing and fast, but the results are soaring. They're a dozen blocks ahead of you. This was the case with Lu Yuing and Tang Qiaowei right now. Lu Yuing trained hard all day long and tried to improve his cultivation, but was slow to break through the bottleneck. While Tang Qiaowei disregards her proper work every day, and even skips school and misses classes, her strength has taken a big step forward. People are really going to be pissed off. Although Lu Yuing was also being made a genius, only she herself knew that she had become powerful step by step through sweat and hard work. Only Tang Qiaowei is a true genius. Fortunately, Lu Yuing had a very positive mindset. She didn't envy or jealousy. She thought that as long as she didn't waste her time, then she was doing right by herself. For the rest, it's all up to God. Tang Xiaowei smiled faintly and said, "Cousin, is this your full strength? I see that the level of Class A is just sloppy, let's call it a day, I'm leaving, bye." After saying that, she bounced out of the martial arts dojo. Just after walking out of the martial arts dojo, Tang Xiaowei saw He Lily and the others guarding the outside. She waved her hand and said, "You guys are back? I'm sorry, my dad had to ask me to come and find my cousin to fight, so I didn't go to the school's martial arts center." She paused here, her gaze sweeping over He Lily's face as she asked, "What's wrong with you? It seems like you're not too happy?" He Lily and the others were nominally Tang Xiaowei's domestic servants, but they had played together since childhood and were very close. Therefore, Tang Xiaowei instantly sensed that He Lily's mood was somewhat abnormal. He Lily busily bowed and said, "Eldest miss, I'm fine." "Not telling me the truth?" Tang Xiaowei suddenly smiled teasingly, stretching out her two small claws and rubbing her hands up and down on He Lily, causing He Lily to laugh or not. Big miss, I'll say. He Lily managed to escape from Tang Xiaowei's clutches with great difficulty, and she said seriously, "We met a boy at the school martial arts center who can use our Tang family's kung fu." Tang Xiaowei's expression changed instantly as she put away her playful smile and solemnly asked, "Are you telling the truth? Who is that person? What's his name?" He Lily returned, "Not sure of his name, only know that he is the cleaner of the school martial arts hall." "How did the cleaner use our Tang family's kung fu?" Tang Xiaowei looked surprised. Her Tang family and the Lu family's kung fu were both of one school, and although they had later split into two tributaries, there was generally no difference. Zhang Zhe had learned Lu Yuying's kung fu, the Lu family's gongfu, which did look extremely similar to the Tang family's gongfu. He Lily and the others had only seen it, not learned it, and it was hard to tell the difference, so they mistakenly thought that Zhang Zhe could also use the Tang clan's kung fu. Fanya said, "Missy, that boy is indeed not ordinary, even Lily suffered a loss in his hands, why don't you let me go and sleep with him to talk about it?" Tang Xiaowei and He Lily and the others instantly cast strange glances at Fanya, they knew this demented girl too well. Seeing a handsome man cannot step, especially like the younger fresh meat, is simply a fishy mother cat. When I didn't say it just now. Fanya smiled awkwardly and busily lowered her head. Tang Xiaowei cupped her chin, her silver teeth biting her lower lip, and after pondering for a moment, she suddenly clapped her hands and said, "I know." "Missy, what do you know?" He Lily and the others asked busily. Tang Xiaowei's face was gloomy, with a look of gnashing teeth, and said, "That cleaner is most likely the wild seed that my dad gave birth to with another woman after he had a fling outside back then." Lily Ho. Fanya. The rest of the girls. Tang Xiaowei continued brainstorming, then Dad knew about this son's existence, so he quietly found him, and because of his inner guilt, he passed on the Tang family's techniques to him. "Yes. That's right, this must be it." Fanya interjected, "But, Missy, the two of you don't look anything like siblings." "Shut up." Tang Xiaowei shouted angrily, saying, Come home with me, I want to confront my philandering father face to face." Afterward, she returned to the Tang clan with the crowd in a rage, without saying a word. The 9th floor of the magic realm, the altar. "We definitely can't fight any more today, many of us are now cursed and unable to continue fighting, so why don't we rest today and continue tomorrow?" The giant god proposed, and the crowd agreed. Naturally, Zhang Zhe wouldn't object, so except for those few who were cursed and couldn't go offline in order to burn up the curse time, the rest of them all went offline to rest. Tomorrow is the day to fill out the volunteers for the martial arts exam, so rest early. Zhang Zhe washed up and turned out his light to sleep. The next day, Zhang Zhe rushed to the school, took the Wucao volunteer form from the class teacher Li Wei, and returned to his seat ready to fill in the volunteer form. In Zhang Zhe's previous life, the college entrance examination filled out not too much difference. Zhang Zhe quickly filled out. Just as he was about to turn it in, he suddenly received a call. Zhang Zhe looked at the number. It was Lu Panpan calling. Lu Panpan has taken time off from work since the last incident to stay home and take care of the injured Lu Kai, and Zhang Feng said that she will be coming to school in the next few days. Hey, Pan, what's up? Zhang Zhe picked up the phone and opened his mouth to ask big brother Zhang Zhe, did Zhang Feng not come to class today because something came up? The teacher asked me to ask her why she hasn't come yet? Hearing Lu Panpan's words, Zhang Zhe was shocked in his heart. He clearly remembered that in the morning time, he was out with his sister. By this time, my sister should have been at school long ago. Could something have happened to my sister? Zhang Zhe's heart instantly lifted. Chapter 110, I'll back you up. Zhang Zhe hurriedly called his sister on his cell phone. Do. The phone has been unanswered. Zhang Zhe put down his cell phone, his heart filled with worry and anxiety. Zhang Feng had always kept her cell phone with her, even when she was busy, she would answer Zhang Zhe's calls. Therefore, Zhang Zhe knew that something must have happened to his sister. His sister was his only family in this world, and he vowed to make her life better and never let anything happen to her. Who the hell is it? A cold light flashed in Zhang Zhe's eyes as he pondered again on who exactly had laid hands on his sister just at this moment. A message suddenly entered Zhang Zhe's cell phone. If you want your sister to return home safely, give up taking the National Martial Arts examination and leave Tianfeng City. Zhang Zhe instantly narrowed his eyes. The message was from the robber, and his sister was in his hands. Although it was impossible to understand what purpose the kidnappers had in doing so, for the sake of his sister's safety, Zhang Zhe could give up his martial arts exam or leave Tianfeng City. But he chose to have to make sure that his sister was safe. After thinking about it, he replied to the other party with a message, "Can you prove that you have my sister? Let me see her." A few minutes later, Zhang Zhe received a photo of Zhang Feng blindfolded, gagged, and bound hand and foot. There were also a few bruises on her face. Obviously beaten, Zhang Zhe's expression turned hideous when he saw his sister being abused. Taking a deep breath, Zhang Zhe immediately replied with the message, "I know, I will do as you say, you release my sister now." The other party replied, "After a week, your sister will naturally come home. Don't play tricks, and don't call the police, or else, you'll collect your sister's corpse." Zhang Zhe put down the phone and saw that the rest of his classmates had already started to turn in their martial arts exam volunteer forms, so he let out a low sigh and balled up the martial arts exam volunteer forms into a ball and threw them to the ground. Although Zhang Zhe had given up the martial arts exam, but it did not indicate that he would obediently wait for the other party to release him if the other party had no intention of releasing him at all, but was prepared to tear the ticket. Zhang Zhe would never see his sister again. So, he decided to launch an immediate operation to rescue his sister himself. But, where did the man hide his sister? After a moment of contemplation, Zhang Zhe pulled out a card from his coat pocket. It's the one Xiang Xiaoqin gave him, with her contact number on it. If it wasn't an emergency, Zhang Zhe was afraid that he would never call Xiang Xiaoqin. The main reason why Zhang Zhe looked for Xiang Xiaoqin instead of calling the police was because the police were too inefficient. By the time the police found his sister, I'm afraid it would be too late for anything. Also, Zhang Zhe was worried that the police action would alert the kidnappers, and then his sister would be in even more danger. Xiang Xiaoqin, on the other hand, is a high-ranking member of the National Security Bureau and has jurisdiction over the police, so it would be a little more efficient for her to intervene, and at the same time, it would be more confidential. Hello. Xiang Xiaoqin's voice came out from the phone, and Zhang Zhe took a deep breath and said, "I want to ask you to do me a favor." Says, "Help me find my sister." Xiang Xiaoqin put down the work on her hands and her expression became serious as she asked in a deep voice, "Tell us the specifics." Zhang Zhe immediately told Xiang Xiaoqin about Zhang Feng's kidnapping, and also the message the kidnappers sent him. "I want to ask you to help me find my sister's current location, I'm going to save her." Zhang Zhe said earnestly, "As long as you help me find my sister, I'll do whatever you ask me to do." Xiang Xiaoqin nodded and said, "Understood. Now, tell me the route your sister took to school, and I'll immediately have someone access the surveillance video. Zhang Zhe immediately told Xiang Xiaoqin, who replied, okay, wait for me for a few minutes, I'll call you if I have a clue. The two then hung up. Zhang Zhe sat in his seat, anxious as hell, his mind full of his sister, not even noticing Lu Wei coming to his side. Zhang Zhe, why haven't you handed in your martial arts examination volunteer form yet? Lu Wei asked somewhat strangely. He clearly remembered that Zhang Zhe had said that he wanted to apply for the Qing University Martial Arts School, so how come he didn't see Zhang Zhe's martial arts examination volunteer form? Zhang Zhe reacted and shook his head. Teacher Lu Wei, I have given up on taking the martial arts exam. Ah? Lu Wei was taken aback. Your condition is very good, why don't you give up? I'm very optimistic about you, as long as you work a little harder, even if you can't get into the Qing University Martial Arts School, the rest of the martial arts schools will be no problem. Sorry, I have bitter feelings. Zhang Zhe sighed, stood up and saluted Lu Wei before running out of the classroom. Lu Wei frowned. He didn't know what kind of hardship Zhang Zhe would have to give up his future. One must know that students who can pass the martial arts examination and enter a martial arts school are all a step above ordinary people in the future, and that is the only way to the upper class. Shaking his head, Lu Wei felt sorry for Zhang Zhe, and he was just about to leave, when he looked down and saw Zhang Zhe's discarded volunteer form for the martial arts exam. The phone rang. It was Xiang Xiaoqin calling. It's only been less than 10 minutes, and Xiang Xiaoqin's side has a clue. It's really efficient. Zhang Zhe picked up the phone with anticipation. Xiang Xiaoqin said, I accessed the surveillance video and found the person who kidnapped your sister. This person is a gangster near your school, nicknamed Crocodile. When Zhang Zhe heard this, his pupils suddenly shrunk. It was actually this asshole. Xiang Xiaoqin continued, the crocodile has been trailing your sister, kidnapped her in an unoccupied remote corner. Behind the crocodile walks on the path. There is no surveillance can be viewed. But I see that the direction he left may be the west side of the city over the ruins. Thanks. I owe you a favor. Zhang Zhe hung up the phone and rushed towards the west of the city. The west side of the city wasn't originally a ruin, where it used to be one of the busiest neighborhoods in Tianfeng City, but it was destroyed during an invasion of the Devil's Cave monsters. It was not repaired later and became a dead zone. When Zhang Zhe arrived at the ruins of the western part of the city, it was already afternoon, and the sun was setting, and the afterglow of the setting sun was reflecting on the broken walls, making it look extremely bleak. Where would the crocodile hide my sister? Zhang Zhe carefully walked through the ruins, observing the situation around him. Suddenly, he noticed a black smoke rising from a ruin in the distance, and he instantly ran in that direction. Inside the ruins, Crocodile and two other punks were huddled around a fire, playing with their cell phones in boredom while drinking beer. Zhang Feng was left in the corner, terrified, having hunger and tiredness. She had already fallen asleep, with tear stains hanging from the corners of her eyes. Brother Crocodile, when is the boss going to take this girl away? I don't want to spend the night in this gloomy shithole. A gangster muttered in a disgruntled whisper. The crocodile bristled and said, you ask me, who the hell do I ask? Anyway, the things that the boss explains, we must do it well, otherwise. His face changed and said, cut the crap, you go out and see what's going on. Look what's going on, no one will even come to this damn place. The little punk was 100 times unwilling in his heart, but he didn't dare to disobey, so he could only mutter and walk out of the ruins. It was quiet all around, with the occasional caw of a crow coming through, making the punk uncomfortable. Shit, let's risk getting caught kidnapping people and wind up here while that asshole is having a quickie somewhere. Who told you to kidnap people? Coldly, a voice suddenly sounded above the gangster's head, and when he looked up in shock, he saw Zhang Zhe crouching on the wall, coldly staring at him. OMG. There's. Before that punk's voice could be shouted out of his throat, Zhang Zhe struck down with a heavy blow on his face, sending him flying across the room, hitting the wall with a thud, and the man fainted directly. From the ruins came the voice of the crocodile. What's wrong? What's all the screaming about? Zhang Zhe clapped his hands and walked directly within the ruins, standing in front of the two crocodiles, and said grimly, "Where is my sister? Also, who instructed you to do this? Speak up and I will spare your lives." The crocodile's eyes widened at once, and his upper and lower teeth fought. The last time he had fought with Zhang Zhe, he had suffered a great deal. One face was swollen for half a month before it gradually subsided, but the big teeth that were knocked out would never grow back. Zhang Zhe. Why are you here? The crocodile retreated back and forth. He copied an iron rod in the corner and crossed it across his chest with trepidation. "Don't come over, I'm not polite, ah." Zhang Zhe let out a low grunt and arrived in front of the crocodile with a gust of wind, and before the crocodile could react, he directly slashed down with a palm. Crunch! The iron rod was bent by Zhang Zhe's slap. Ah! When the other punk saw how valiant Zhang Zhe was, he was so scared that he rolled and fled out of the ruins. The crocodile was also stunned, and his hand let go, the iron bar falling to the ground with a bang. "Your bones, are they as strong as this iron rod?" Zhang Zhe's murderous aura made the crocodile feel that the temperature around him had dropped several degrees. "Spare me. I was also forced. It was the boss who had to let me kidnap your sister." The crocodile flung himself to his knees and begged for mercy. "Where is my sister?" Zhang Zhe asked in a cold voice inside. The crocodile hurriedly climbed up and led Zhang Zhe into a lower space inside the ruins to find Zhang Feng, who was still sleeping. Zhang Zhe immediately rushed up and removed the ropes from his sister's hands and feet, the blindfold and the rags from her mouth, and gently called her name. "Brother." "Wu." Hearing Zhang Zhe's call, Zhang Feng slowly woke up, and seeing that Zhang Zhe was indeed in front of his eyes, he burst into tears of joy and hugged Zhang Zhe's neck as he whimpered and cried bitterly. Zhang Zhe gently stroked the bruise on his sister's cheek and asked in a cold voice, "Crocodile, who is your boss?" This crocodile had a tangled face. He didn't dare to offend Zhang Zhe, but even more so, he didn't dare to betray his boss. "Are you going to say it or not?" Zhang Zhe crushed a stone block on the ground with one hand. The crocodile was so scared that he hurriedly said, "Yes, it's Xing Hao. He's the one who asked me to kidnap your sister, and he said that you're the biggest obstacle for him to enter the Qing University Martial Arts School." Zhang Zhe was stunned. Xing Hao? He didn't remember having many encounters with this Xing Hao, only that the two of them had a conversation when they were in the school martial arts hall before. "That asshole. I won't let him go." Anger burned in Zhang Zhe's eyes. This Xing Hao had kidnapped his sister for the sake of a place in Qing University's martial arts school. It was simply abominable. "Where is Xing Hao now?" Zhang Zhe asked, suppressing his anger. The crocodile scowled. "I know where his house is, but don't know if he's at home." Zhang Zhe nodded his head, indicating that he knew. "That, Boss Zhang Zhe, your sister has been found, and I've told you all about Xing Hao. Can I go now?" The crocodile accompanied a smile and quietly stepped backward. Zhang Zhe stood up with his sister in his arms and said in a deep voice, "The injury on my sister's face, did you hit her?" "This is all a misunderstanding. At that time your sister struggled a lot. I was afraid of being discovered, so I am sorry." "Sorry." The crocodile's face was white for a while, and he apologized. But Zhang Zhe responded with a whip kick. It directly whipped him away. With a rumbling sound, the crocodile collapsed 2 walls before coming to a stop. Its entire face was deformed by Zhang Zhe's leg, and all of its mouthful of teeth shattered. "Humph." Zhang Zhe grunted angrily. Although he didn't take the crocodile's life, the kid would have to stay in the hospital for at least a month. A sound of a helicopter propeller came from the helicopter, and Zhang Zhe looked up, and in the helicopter, a man poked out half of his body to look down at Xiang Shaoqin. Xiang Shaoqin undid her seatbelt and jumped down directly from a height of several dozen meters, landing smoothly in front of Zhang Zhe. "Found your sister? Is everyone all right?" Xiang Shaoqin asked with concern. Zhang Zhe nodded. "Well, my sister is fine." He was silent for a moment and said, "I know who instructed the crocodile to kidnap my sister." Xiang Xiaoqin tilted her head slightly and asked, "Who is it?" "Xing Hao, a student of our school. He's worried that I've snatched his acceptance into Qing University's martial arts school." Zhang Zhe looked at Xiang Xiaoqin and said, "Can you please take care of Zhang Feng for me? I need to talk to Xing Hao." "Yes." Xiang Xiaoqin directly took over Zhang Feng. The sound of sirens came from not far away. It should be the police arriving. Zhang Zhe turned around and left when Xiang Xiaoqin's voice came from behind him. "Hey! Zhang Zhe! Let go and do it. Don't worry if you kill someone, I'll back you up." The corner of Zhang Zhe's mouth curled slightly. This Xiang Xiaoqin was quite right for his temper. Xing Hao stood in front of the window, looking at the sky in the direction of the west of the city, flashing the red and blue lights of the police lights, and he narrowed his eyes slightly. Things actually fell apart. Damn it. The matter of kidnapping Zhang Feng, Xing Hao thought that he would not be defeated. After all, the cell phone that he sent the message to Zhang Zhe was the one that he let Crocodile and the others use to steal it, and the police simply could not trace his head. Moreover, the location where Crocodile and the others were hiding was known only to him, and it was impossible for them to be discovered. It's still strange. Xing Hao shook his head. He didn't contact the Crocodile, because he knew it was all too late. The Crocodile is caught and under police questioning. There is a high probability that he will betray Yung Ho, and the police should come to him soon. Although his heart was upset, Xing Hao knew he couldn't stay here. "Zhang Zhe. I'll be back." Xing Hao looked at the table, where a bottle of mauve-colored potion was placed. Just then, a rock suddenly smashed through the glass of Xing Hao's room. Whoa! Broken glass scattered all over the place. Xing Hao was shocked in his heart. Then he heard Zhang Zhe's voice from outside. "Xing Hao, get the hell out.